Welcome to the Nerd Tutorial Podcast, a podcast offering discussions and tutorials on nerdy subjects for people who aren't necessarily nerdy themselves. With you today, myself, is your Nerdy Tutor George, and with me here today, my own Wonder Woman, circa 1984, my mom.
Well, and you were born in 1983, and given that you were 10 pounds at birth, it was a Wonder Woman act to birth you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we last week we started our conversation on Wonder Woman itself, and then we are continuing this week because we have the Wonder Woman 1984 movie that came out, and I have opinions. Mom, do you have opinions?
I have opinions.
Okay. So this will be a spoilerish sort of podcast, so please be in mind that we will be talking directly about the movie, and we will be talking about elements of the movie. And if you don't want to be spoiled necessarily...
We're not spoiling the Easter egg.
We're not going to spoil the one Easter egg. That one's not going to happen at all.
It's telling when one of my favorite parts of the movie is the Easter egg in the closing credits.
Okay, yeah, we won't talk about that.
We'll just say, watch the closing credits.
Oh, yeah. I wish it was more of a part of the movie, but I mean, like...
I wondered if it would be, but I was pleased to see it there. That was fun.
I was pleased to see it just there as well, yeah. So we won't be talking about that, but we will be talking about elements.
It's worthy, though.
We will be talking about elements of the movie here, so if you don't want to be spoiled, go ahead and stop listening now, go watch the movie, and then come back and listen to our discussions and see maybe if you have the same thoughts, opinions, or anything else in that particular nature here at all. So, what are your first impressions of the movie?
Well, let me first describe how I watched it.
Okay.
I watched it on my Surface Pro.
Okay.
While riding a bike.
Oh, you didn't watch it with Pop at all?
No, we couldn't get it to play on the TV, but that's fine.
Oh, okay.
So I watched it on my Surface Pro while riding a bike. And I didn't know which was more painful, riding a bike for that length of time, and I ride the bike every day, but I mean, it did not make the time pass quickly.
Yeah.
Let's just say it and The Irishman have a lot in common. Overlong, self-indulgent, and taking itself a bit too seriously.
So I kind of, especially as we got past, like...
It takes an hour to set up the story. Come on.
Okay, yeah, that was probably my most annoying part there. That it really did take an hour and a half. It almost felt like it took like a full hour
I timed
to
it.
get there. Well,
I'm like, okay, finally we figure out what the story is. We're 57 minutes in.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think he could have gotten a lot through a lot more, a lot quicker. I really do honestly believe.
Well, but let's say, okay, so when this was filmed in 2018, 2019, 2019?
This got filmed in 2018. It got announced directly after the first movie came out
in 2017.
In 2018, okay. And so, actually, speaking about the release here for it, originally it was set to release in December of 2019, and then it got pushed back to November because it didn't want to compete with James Bond, and then in November, it was announced that Star Wars was coming out, so it didn't want to compete with that necessarily. In December, Star Wars would have come out, so they pushed it back to November, and then and again, I mean, from what I've understood and what I've been able to hear from news rumors and stuff like that, is that people were not initially happy with early test screenings of it, so they wanted to go back and do pickup footage and stuff like that and reshoots. And they also kind of looked at it and said, like, you know what, maybe this would do a lot better in the summertime, which is when the first movie came out and did gangbusters there as well.
Yeah, because we saw the first movie Father's Day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there was that element there. Obviously, because of COVID, it got pushed back even further. It was originally, so in March it got pushed back to August. By June, it got pushed back to October, and then they finally, I think, just bit the bullet here and just decided to release it in theaters and release it primarily on streaming services here. Because again, I mean, like,
I watched it on a streaming service.
Yeah, so I mean, at the end, HBO Max, if memory serves me right. But I mean, they were very much preferring to not have to do that at the end of the day. And the reason they kept pushing it back, obviously, because they was hoping this,
things
plague
would open.
Yeah, this plague that's out there would get a lot better and things would reopen. And it's kind of been in the same purgatory, I guess is the best way to describe it here, as Black Widow. Because the Black Widow movie is done. It's finished filming. It's ready to go. They just don't want to release it without getting a big payout for it. And I don't blame them kind of in the same way, because again, like, you spend all this money to make this movie, you want to get the biggest bang for your buck out of it, and to release it onto, and the way they would release it at the end of the day would be onto Disney Plus, where you might get some more people jumping onto the service here, but I mean, like, probably not enough to warrant the movie tickets, because you would have to get a movie ticket for every person versus a dozen people could watch it in a living room at one time.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, they're in like this...
Okay, let's cut to the chase here. It wouldn't have mattered when you were going to release it.
Oh, no.
Okay,
no.
It might have done blockbusters before, like the first weekend it was out, before people started talking about it. But I can't believe a whole lot of people saw this differently than I did.
So I've watched it twice. I watched it the week before.
Gosh.
I watched it the week before, and then I watched it again last night just to be like, okay, let me just make sure I didn't miss anything necessarily.
So was it better on the second viewing?
If you just assume that it's weird comic book bullshit kind of at the end of the day, like, it's kind of a little bit funner.
Okay, so here's my problem with one of several.
Okay.
I couldn't tell whether it was trying to be serious or campy. Some of it's so far-fetched and so
out there
that you think, okay, as camp, this would work. As you well know, I have bizarre movie taste, and I'm an absolute sucker for camp. I actually liked Tropic Thunder. I also really bad, super bad was super bad, and I loved it. Laughed the entire time. And not everybody's cup of tea, because your father thought that was horrible. So good.
It's sometimes putting a gun to my head to watch Superbad.
Okay,
because it's so cringy at certain points.
It is so cringy. That's exactly it's one of those, I can't believe they did that.
Well, that was how I felt about Tropic Thunder, but Tropic Thunder is actually funny. I would have never thought Robert Downey Jr. in blackface with Ben Stiller would have been like, okay, yeah, sure, let's see where you go with this. This is very, very off-putting, but sure, let's see where you go with this.
It just got so many different tangents. It's just so bad that it's good.
Okay.
So there are things that are so bad that they're good.
Yes.
We can agree upon that. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So good camp, Kingman 1, thumbs up, Kingman 2, absolutely not. Yeah. So good camp, totally a fan. Couldn't tell whether this was trying to be, and I don't think it knew either, whether it was trying to be serious or it was trying to be
or campy and something
or campy, because some of it's so far-fetched. It's, the best parts of the movie are probably the parts that are a little campy. Really enjoyed, first of all, in the 80s, I was in my 20s. Okay? So I totally identify with the fashion. Now, there are Miami Vice moments with the fashion. Okay?
Oh, very much.
Yeah. So totally get that it gets the vibe of the 80s. It probably accentuates it a little bit. It gets that whole sort of me generation vibe.
It feels like sometimes it goes a little over the top, but that's okay, because
It's
you really want to express that this is the 80s, like,
yeah, like a little like the Goldbergs.
Yeah.
So you want to stress that it's the 80s, so it's the 80s on HD.
Yes.
How's that? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So appreciate that it got, I felt, that part right. It got that whole sort of self-indulgent generation, and the storyline works with that self-indulgent generation. It really does. that whole idea of if you want it bad enough, you can have it.
Yeah, or that so much that there's so much, leisureless opportunities that is available at the end of the day.
And there's egregious wealth and. And I actually felt like it was a little Trumpish that way because
we'll get to that part later.
Okay, but Trump is very much that
mold.
That mold. So that opulent fake, but opulent mold, and so it got that right. And one of the best scenes in it, and here we're going to give away plot twists. Chris Pine comes back.
Yes.
Okay. And I think that's probably in the trailers, so I don't think we're giving away much there.
No.
So Chris Pine comes back, and they actually flip roles. So in the first movie, one of the sweet, endearing things was Wonder Diana learning how to wear clothes, women's fashion, seeing horse and buggy, seeing
this mid 1920s sort of version of the world, and that's all very like
the first
innocent
cars.
and nubile to her as well. And this is also my favorite part of the movie as well, was just watching, Captain Trevor here, like Deanna just literally leading Captain Trevor around, and it's like he's amazed by escalators, the subway system.
She has to walk him onto an escalator. Because he has, so it's an absolute flip of that very endearing scene in the first movie, and that was sweet.
That is probably my favorite part in the entire movie.
So
that 5 minutes of doing that.
Well, and
that fish out of water sort of thing. It's what
I
wish.
And the 5 minutes of getting him dressed. Getting him dressed takes.
Oh, that was hilarious too.
Everybody parachutes. It gets a cute moment.
Oh yeah.
Because he's wearing parachute pants. He's like, everybody parachutes? No, nobody parachutes. We're just wearing awful style. So I thought that was sweet. It was endearing. It was a link back to the first movie, switching their places, and from that end, it was really cute. And initially he comes back in somebody else's body. He actually goes and looks for her, and
finds her via the phone book.
Finds her via the phone book because he says some things don't change. Well, if that were to happen today, he wouldn't be finding her, would he?
No.
Interesting timing.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, like
that was my first thought. Was you move it another 20 years, and phone books don't exist.
True, but I mean, you might have struggles then.
By 2004, phone books are gone.
True. That does lead an interesting question of if you set this in the mid 2000s here, even, or 2006, 2007, even, like, would somebody understand how to use the Googles, or even understand what email was, or anything,
or what
like
a computer was? I mean, how would he even know what to turn on?
Yeah. Which
leads me to another point in a couple of minutes, but. I think you know where I'm going with that one. Anyway, so that to me totally works. Okay,
that part
there's
of the movie,
the cute
absolutely.
moments, but some of that is pretty campy too.
Absolutely.
And so those lighthearted moments are probably for me the best parts of the movie.
Yeah, again, when it's not taking itself, when it's this fish out of water moment, when it's Deanna and Captain Trevor with each other, in that particular case, like, it's sweet, and it's, like, it's super endearing, and, like, I like that element of it. Again, like, part of, I think, with the entire one of the problems with the movie here is just the uneven dissonance between, obviously, like you said, what is, parts of it being really
Great
campy, and then other parts of it trying to be serious about it here. Like, I'm just going to be outright and say here, like, thank God Kristen Wiig was there, because she was stretched. I don't mean that in a bad. No. So I mean.
Yeah, no, I get it.
She is really, really straining for this role here, and she's doing everything to go from.
They're trying to make her sexy, which I'm not sure entirely works.
No.
Okay, good. Okay, good to get a male view on that.
No. Again, there's the scene where, like, she dresses up in the black dress to go to the Smithsonian Gala, and I'm just like, okay, Yeah, the dress is really is kind of nice. I guess I don't know.
It's really tight and it's very figure flattering, and
Yeah.
she has the figure for it.
Yeah, it's a figure for it.
And suddenly she can walk in high heels.
But like I'm noticing the hair, and I'm just like, oh dear God, you get electrocuted? What happened? Like, no, I understand it's 80s hair.
It's 80s hair.
It's 80s
I
hair.
could show you a picture that would absolutely of me with your sister with all the. I never went the full 80s hair, but it's definitely 80s hair.
Yeah, like it's just that like, for my sensibility here, like she's really straining against the role.
She's not.
She's perfect in the sense that she plays off the nerd turning into like the celebrity sort of aspect of it really well.
I think the nerd could have been played by any number of women though that might have been better in that the femme fatale that she becomes.
I do kind of
and
so, as well, but I mean like, but I also kind of appreciate Kristen Wiig because I think she's again being put in an interesting role where it's not something she normally does at all, and so it's kind of like when Bruce Willis got put into Die Hard.
Far cry from Bridesmaid.
Yeah, well, again, it's a far, it's not the kind of movie you would expect her in, and I can kind of appreciate that at the end of the day that you were not going to expect Kristen Wiig to do this, and she does a very admirable job for it at the end of the day here. All things considered. So
let's back up here though. Let's talk about the fact that you have 4 major roles in the movie, right?
Again, when I was going through this list here, I was going through 4 major characters. You've got
the 4 major characters, but the most recognizable names in this movie in order are Gal Gadot, Chris Pine, Kristen Wiig.
Yeah.
She's the 3rd most recognizable name in a movie that's supposed to be a blockbuster. That right there tells you that people passed on this story. Because for a blockbuster, you expect... I mean, after that, the name recognition drops like...
Well, I mean, Pedro Pascal is quickly becoming a bigger name.
Is
over
he?
time,
Maybe I'm working in the wrong circles. But
he's slowly becoming a bigger name. I mean, like he had a big deal with he was in Narcos, and then he was also he's the Mandalorian as well. So he's getting So he's getting more recognition over time. And actually, what's interesting about Pedro Pascal is that this is his 2nd Wonder Woman production. Actually,
oh, is it?
Because he was actually in the pilot for the 2011 TV series that would have been playing off of like they were trying to get launched as well. So he was in that at one point.
Well, I sat there trying to think of other people who could have
done the role initially.
Yeah. So well, other people that could have done actually both roles. I wonder what if you had a Colin Firth play that role, what you would have gotten out of it.
And now I can see Colin Firth doing that kind of role.
I also played the same game with the Kristen Wiig role.
So the original Kristen Wiig, from what I understand, was actually originally going to be the studio wanted to get Emma Stone.
Okay, that would have been a good.
Because again, Emma Stone can definitely pull off the femme fatale sort of element on that very easily.
Isla Fisher, I thought would be an interesting choice for that role.
I gotta find his name here because because I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
I thought somebody who could have so Kristen Wiig does I don't want to say a serviceable job. It's better than that. But there were so many different ways to interpret that character, and it was interpreted in the most boring, bland way it could have been.
It didn't take any risks.
There you go. Okay, so maybe that's my problem.
I think that was really the thing here.
It was played straight up.
It was played very straight. I almost imagine that like somebody saw. I really do think that somebody saw Princess Diaries and was like.
That's such a great analogy.
That's immediately what I thought of when I saw it. I was thinking like, oh, they're gonna do Princess Diaries on this shit. Now, don't get me wrong. I like Princess Diaries. I really did.
At first, I thought they were going to go Clark Kent on it, and it was going to be that Wonder Woman was going to get a sidekick. Like she realized, which
is really what she needs. I mean, like at the end of the day here, like, I kind of understand. So again, obviously Gal Gadot, English is not her first language. And
I actually kind of like the unplaceable accent.
I do too. It's just that I don't know.
I mean, Maxwell Lord has an unplaceable accent as well.
Yeah, but I think that's a lot of Pedro Pascal as well at a certain level.
Yeah. I mean, both with the choice of both actors, you're going to get an imperfect.
It's not so much that I don't mind the imperfect accent at the end of the day, or even so much that it's not the first language, which would be perfectly fine considering that, like, Diana is supposed to know multiple languages. I think
the fact that she is a mystery anyway.
Yes, and again, it adds that element on there. It's just that, like, it's hard to tell whether Gal Gadot is a really great actress or not in that particular respect because...
Oh, she's not.
Yeah, I think a lot of the case was for her was because she is like 5'9".
She's an Amazon.
Yeah, that she's like 5'9", and that she could stand next to Henry Cavill and Ben Affleck, for that initial movie, and that she looks the part. She really does look the part.
She looks the part. She looks a lot like Linda Carter did. She has the right figure for it. I think she's actually a good choice for it. Much like you said, they played it safe.
Oh yeah, this is one where they played it really safe. With
Barbara's character, they played it safe,
mm-hmm.
and you're exactly right because they play her straight up, and there's not a whole lot of visible direction there. She is what she is, and they don't give her, even with her storyline, I don't have a lot of empathy for
her at the end of the day. I mean, like, you spend so little time.
She's not interesting.
I don't know if it's that. It's just like you see so little of her in the beginning, and what you do see of her in the beginning is this rampant doormat of a person.
And yet Gal Gadot has dinner with her and says, I haven't laughed this hard in a long time. You're such a warm person. And you see her giving food away on a regular basis.
And you see that she's a nice person and everything.
He knows that guy.
Yeah.
And this is a homeless person that she greets very warmly. And that's done so that she can turn on him later.
Mm-hmm.
And tell him to mind his own business. And so they spend what is it, a half hour at the beginning with this contest that Diana's in, which has this prescience moment in which she is not allowed to finish the competition because she takes a shortcut. Now she's a little girl in this. She's like maybe 10. 8, 10.
The actress who did it was 12, and was actually kind of interesting from what I was reading in notes on it was that the 12-year-old actually did all the stunts because the other 12-year-olds couldn't, or the stunt doubles couldn't do the stunts as well.
So this is like a Gladiator, like the television.
Oh yeah, no, it's very Gladiator-esque.
Yeah,
at the end of the day.
where there's an obstacle course that's about impossible. She falls off her horse deep into it. At some point she's leading. You have to swim, you have to run, you have to leap all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And she falls off her horse and she sees a shortcut where she knows she can catch up with her horse. She takes the shortcut and she hops, and she's still shooting all her arrows in the right things. This makes a pentathlon look like nothing. And she's against all these full-grown women. Mm-hmm. She's the only child in here against all these full-grown women. And right as she comes in to finish, and she's going to throw her javelin through this very distant circle, she
gets stopped.
She gets stopped, and because she took a shortcut,
mm-hmm.
and she tries to explain, and the woman who stops her says, "All that matters is the truth, and you can't win without the truth, and you can't." And it's a very prescient moment for what's been happening the last 2 months. It's an interesting.
Yeah.
If you go back and rewatch just that part, it's an interesting.
It's interesting, but but unfortunately, it's not our lives at all either, because like the truth really does matter, and
nothing matters but the truth.
Nothing matters but the truth, and you get held accountable for that. like I'm kind of seeing a little bit of that now, but I mean, but that's a whole nother thing here. My biggest annoyance with that was that, that element of the story of Diana trying to take a shortcut, later on, doesn't come up at all.
It doesn't come up, and I kept waiting for it to.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
why would you have her take this shortcut and choose the easy path?
Or so much as that, like, the truth doesn't matter at the end of the day, could have been an interesting narrative that, like, it is, again, it's not a very explicit narrative, but is somewhat of a narrative throughout the entire thing, because, again, one of the things...
she hears the lasso of truth, and truth
she has the
comes
lasso
up.
of truth, and which I wish they would have done more with, in all honesty, outside of being just like a plot MacGuffin sort of like grapple hook element.
Yeah.
I really do wish they used the lasso of truth in more interesting ways. Well,
I mean, at the end they use it. They use it to have Max Lord see the truth, but it isn't as powerful a moment as it could have been.
Oh yeah, no,
he could have seen the truth as people's wishes not bringing them happiness.
Yeah,
and it isn't really played off that way.
No,
or that's not what I took from that moment.
So the plot MacGuffin of this entire thing is this Dreamstone, which is supposed to be kind of like the monkey's paw at the end of the day here.
Yep.
It's supposed to be like, yes, you get your wish, but it doesn't necessarily happen the way you want it to.
It costs you.
Or it costs you something at the end of the day. So
nothing's for free.
No. Nothing's... again, the law of equivalent exchange.
Yeah.
And so I would have liked that, like, that entire initial intro sequence here really dragged on after a certain point, because you're just like, okay, where is this going? What is this going to be? What is this going to be used for?
It took too long.
It's 12 minutes long.
Is it? Oh, it seemed like longer.
It's 12 minutes long, and then you have, like, this next montage of Diana as Wonder Woman, like, doing stuff for what felt like the better part, which was for another 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then you don't see Wonder Woman ever again for about another hour and a half.
Yeah, she doesn't show up for a while.
No, she doesn't show up for quite some time. And I'm a little... So, okay, so going back to the first element here, which is the gladiator competition.
Right.
There's a literary term... Well, it's not necessarily a literary term, actually. It's kind of a movie term called Chekhov's gun. And the notion of Chekhov's gun is that you don't introduce a gun and then don't have it play a portion of it.
Okay, thank you.
So Hitchcock came up with this, had this notion kind of at the end of the day, or I think it's actually this guy named Chekhov, but I heard it from, I've heard it from Hitchcock at the end of the day, was that if you introduce something into, so like at the end of the day, I introduce this gun, and I leave it on the table, I am secretly telling the audience that gun is going to be used for something later on. Whether you actually use it or not is completely, whether you use it for what was intended or not is a completely different thing. But the audience is expecting you to use that, because why would you introduce it if you didn't? It's kind of the same element in comedy, or rather, not necessarily comedy, but improv comedy, is that if you introduce something at the end of the day here, like you have to have that continue to be a part of the world. So like if you were, oh yeah, we're on this fishing expedition, yeah, but we're leaving the fishing now, we're going to go do that. But everyone's like, no, you talked about fishing. We're now invested in the fishing. What's going on with the fishing? So like you don't bring stuff up unless you tend to use it in some sort of way, shape, or form, or somehow introduce something to the plot at the end of the day. So I mean, like, there's that element, there's those elements there at the end of the day that come up, and I find that this entire gladiator sort of thing, which is again a neat thing to see this young girl doing this and kind of seeing, like, this harsh lesson that Diana learns at the end of the day, which is all the truth is. The
truth is everything.
But it's not in the same context, though. I mean, like, this is Diana, if Diana had been trying to find a shortcut and trying to find every other way to get what she wants without losing Steve Trevor,
right?
Which does kind of happen here. Like,
yeah,
I would kind of understand, but I mean, like, it's something completely different. Where, like, if during the entire event, instead of taking a shortcut, which is clearly kind of meant to saying like you're taking a shortcut, if she had failed at something and then tried everything else to win at the end of the day, but didn't win, then I think they would kind of make more sense later on, where like.
But I guess that's my issue. Is in the storyline, she never takes a shortcut. So wouldn't it have been better to go back to the story of Asteria,
Mm-hmm.
and tell a little bit more of her story, and have it be that in order to save the world you have to sacrifice, because in the end this is about sacrifice.
Yeah, or so much in the sense is that again, I think that if you really got to the I really do think that if you recontextualize that gladiator thing into an element of sacrificing, but also, you know, you have to do the right thing at the end of the day. If you recontextualize that, then that would have made a much better it would have been a much more meaningful element throughout the entire movie in and of itself. Because again, I mean, like, there's, you know, outside of like being depowered a little bit, I mean, like, Wonder Woman's not really losing a whole lot here. I mean, like, I mean, at the end of the day here, like, yeah, you're losing a lot of your strength at the end of the day, but you're still fairly capable of doing all this other stuff fairly easily.
Well, okay, so part of it to me was an interesting choice. You save the world, or you have a life as a normal human being. You get depowered, but you get Steve.
Yeah,
which wouldn't be a bad life.
No, and I think that'd be a life that she'd be willing to do. And again, that goes back to
but you could have leveraged off of that and had them have this conversation. But we could have a life together. Well, what kind of world would it be?
Mm-hmm.
But we could have a life together, and whatever world it would be, I could have a life as a normal person with you, and maybe I'm ready to have a life as a normal person.
Yeah, because if you think about it in that context, it's been 60 years.
Yeah,
you know, since you've seen this person, and like,
and you've never found another love, and
mm-hmm.
and you've had 60 years at the same age. Maybe it's time for you to be depowered and live a normal life.
And that would go back to what was the original, what would happen back in the 70s, where Wonder Woman did get depowered and stuff from there. So I mean, like, in that particular aspect, it is kind of a nice little nod to that.
But they never actually have that conversation.
No, and then they never actually do that.
And this is where I think the movie can't decide whether it's serious or campy. And if it was going to go the serious route, that would have been the route to take.
Mm-hmm.
You could have had an adult conversation about the choices we make. And do I choose Steve and a life that's normal in a world that's chaos?
Mm-hmm.
Or do I choose saving the world from chaos and give up Steve?
Yeah.
And actually talk about what that sacrifice is, because that conversation takes a matter of maybe 2 minutes,
2 or 3 different minutes to going through it. But they have this in this kind of they do kind of have that conversation, but they don't actually
kind of in a void. They
never talk. But they don't actually go through it. They're just kind of like yelling at the void at each other, like, "No, you have to do this. I'm not doing it, but you have to do this.
I gave you up once."
You know, like,
yeah, I've never asked for anything in the world. What the conversation they don't have is, if I chose that, then I would live as a normal human being, and I would live as a normal mortal, and what is that world like? They don't have that conversation, which would have been the sort of adult conversation to have. That would have been interesting. So going back to the 12 minutes, was it really only 12 minutes? It seemed long.
It felt really long.
It felt really long.
Well, in the worst part, again, it would be fine if it was that long, but if you had an idea of where it was going and what was actually happening.
But what would have happened if you had spent 6 minutes on her life as a child and 6 minutes on Barbara's life as a child? Barbara's a geologist. She's
mm-hmm.
obviously very sciencey and nerdy. Could you have... Because later on they show you Max Lord's growing up.
Yeah, I think...
Which is totally wasted too, but okay.
Agreed, yeah. I mean, it would have been...
You can't
it could have been more interesting.
Every bad person on having abusive parents.
Yeah. No, I mean...
It's not an excuse.
No, and I do think, like...
It's very simplistic.
I do think that scene lasted way longer than it needed to, and I certainly...
It seemed to me tossed in without much thought.
I think there was an intention there. I think it just didn't come off the way we viewed it at the end of the day. Because, I mean, like... Because, again, I mean, like, you're not going to go through the entire process of creating these sets, creating all... You know, going and getting these horses and learning horseback riding and having all these different elements and go to these remote locations to shoot these scenes without some sort of intent being there at the end of the day. I mean, like, at the end of the day, I mean, like, you're not going to be able to really convince a movie studio to be like, hey, we should do X, Y, and Z, because, you know, in the story here, they're going to look at you and be like, okay, but what, you know, but why are we doing this? And that's part of the reason why I don't understand why they go to...
I found a few locations for bliss near you.
Thank you, Google.
Google just chimed in.
Google likes to, yeah, so... But again, I mean, like, that's why I certainly wonder why they went to Spain to shoot those scenes in Spain, when the fight happens in this remote desert where you didn't really need to do it at all. Like,
okay, so we're talking about when they get to Egypt, yeah.
Yeah, like, I don't understand.
Okay,
like,
well, okay, so let's back up. Let's take this chronologically. I think there were other things you could have done with the opening scenes that maybe would have shown Barbara developing, Max Lord developing, and Diana developing, and counterpose the different worlds. Say, this is what happens when you grow up in a supportive world, when you grow up in a world where right is right, and that's what's taught.
And I think you could have done it in a nice, you know, 80s montage as well, even.
Yeah, so I think there was a different way to handle that. I found it self-indulgent. Just my 2 cents. Although always nice to see Robin Wright.
We need more Robin Wright.
We need more Robin Wright. So I thought that was interesting. So, you know, we get through the whole sort of, there's this Latin stone with a ring on it. Looks almost kind of like a vase, actually, but it isn't.
It's a weird sort of ring.
Yeah, it's a weird sort. Well, but it's not a ring. It's a, because, you know, it's
so
almost
it's like a stone. It's a stone that's like put around a ring
with a metal thing holding it together that is the size of a bracelet.
Yeah, about the size of a bracelet.
So, and the stone, we learn over the course of the movie, has been in a number of places, a number of times. Barbara's a geologist at the Smithsonian, new hire. Diana befriends her. She's a nerd. She trips over everything. She falls.
Yeah.
And nobody's very interested in her. She's very boring.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, they become interested in her once she gets sexed up. I think the whole sexing up of Kristen Wiig doesn't totally work for me, but that's okay.
Well, I find that to be an odd notion at the end of the day, considering that, like, you think Wonder Woman as this very sex-positive sort of individual, this very sexy but still kind of sophisticated glamour sort of thing.
Yep.
And that her power lies in the fact that she is gentle and that she is kind, despite being this.
Yeah.
And that Kristen Wiig gets more powerful the sexier she gets.
Yeah.
Kind of a weird dissonance there between what your title character is versus what your villain is. I found that to be a weird dichotomy at the end of the day between, like, you get more powerful based off of how much sexier and semi-sluttier you get.
Well, but interesting that men found her more attractive. This, you know, the more sort of I know what you're doing tonight thing happened. Yeah. So in the course of this whole thing, this stone gets robbed from
Kristen Wiig at some point.
Well, yeah, this stone only comes to Kristen Wiig because the FBI wants information on it because it was robbed from a store. Mm-hmm. And Kristen Wiig and Diana realizes from the very beginning that the stone, because it has an inscription in Latin, which of course she can read.
Something off about it. There's something.
Yeah, that there's something, that it's a wishing. She interprets it to be a wishing stone, but she knows that there's just something wrong, and but after, you know, they have this little conversation in which they say, you know, what would you wish for? And Diana says, I know what I would wish for. And then after she leaves, Barbara wishes to be like Diana.
Yeah.
And so that evening, Kristen Wiig still has the stone in her office. Max Lord knows she has the stone in her office. He is a failing
so we might
pyramid scheme guy, really.
Yes, we should really talk about Max Lord at this point here, because we've kind of slightly dancing around it here.
Yeah.
Like, so
divorced dad.
Divorced dad, some, kind of like a infomercial, sort of like, you can get, you can make it if you can dream it, you can have it, sort of like.
He's selling stock in oil futures.
Yes, and not, and hasn't actually found oil here yet at all. I found it very interesting because, again, you see him and he's like, oh, he's this very put together person. Then you get to his actual office and, like,
it's empty. It's cavernous, but empty.
It's cavernous. It's like everything got ripped out of the walls and everything. But then you get to his office and it's still just this luscious, nice office that,
opulent. Lots of antiquities.
Yeah, lots of antiquities and gold kind of elements in a lot of cases, brass and bronze.
Very opulent in sort of the 80s way. And that's, as I said earlier, one of the things the movies got right.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Again, very much it oozes the 80s, I think is the better way to put it here.
Yeah.
So Pedro Pascal obviously is slowly becoming a much better geek known actor, kind of, I think, at the end of the day, especially as he's been the Mandalorian here.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, has certainly been an interesting role for a title character, because I really do like the fact that in The Mandalorian, he rarely, if ever, takes off his helmet. Mm-hmm. And because he rarely, if ever, almost never takes off his helmet here, like, it's a largely quiet role. You didn't even really need to have him in the suit, but he did all of his own suit work and everything. Uh-huh. Which I found awesome. Yeah. But his intention, whether this was the case or not, this is what he's publicly said, is that he's trying to do a Gordon Gekko by way of Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor.
I see that, actually.
Yeah, and you can totally see that.
Yeah.
I think the problem here is that not a lot of people are going to remember who Gordon Gekko was, and are not going to remember Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor.
Wall Street.
Yeah.
And Superman.
And so I think the logical...
But it's a callback to the 80s. I mean...
It's a very good callback to the 80s, absolutely. Yeah. Again, I mean, Superman 1979 would have been right then and there, and then you would have had Superman, the second Superman as well, just a couple of years later in 82, I want to say. I mean, like, yes, it totally makes sense there. I absolutely agree. It's just that I think for our modern audiences, I think the analogy is going to be to, our president at this time, Donald Trump. And I don't...
Who also is an icon of the 80s.
Also very much an icon of the 80s. Again, I mean, I appreciate kind of the way that this character is portrayed, because the character is a very much is not necessarily a mainstay of the DC comics, but is an important character in the DC comics. So in the DC comics here, Maxwell Lord IV. The fourth is the son of another very, very well-known businessman in the Lord family. He is a very prominent, business magnate, and how do I put it here?
Well, in that light, the backstory that they gave him in the middle of the movie makes absolutely no sense at all.
No. In that particular aspect,
and it seemed disjointed.
Yeah, I mean, like, I really do think it was like a businessman who wanted to be better at the end of the day. But again, I mean, like, the Maxwell Lord character from the comics is actually fairly interesting. I mean, he creates the Justice League International in Europe. He eventually gets mind control powers, and he's actually the one person that got Wonder Woman to kill.
Oh.
So he's an interesting character in that particular respect. He also...
No, she almost kills. They stop her just short.
Yeah. He's also... so he was a big deal in the Infinite Crisis element, where he kills the Blue Beetle that ends up kind of sparking a number of events that happen throughout that series, and as a result of Wonder Woman killing him, which he also kind of semi-planned as well, it also brings us to kind of a super interesting story in Blackest Night and Brightest Day later on.
Okay.
Which I actually find is kind of an interesting story. Blackest Night is kind of DC's way of explaining why superheroes keep coming back to life. And as a result of the end of that, they move into Brightest Day, which is the aftermath of the events of Blackest Night, which resurrects Maxwell Lord. So this character that had been dead for I think the better part of 5 or 6 years, got resurrected again, and he's been kind of an interesting character.
So I'm just going to ask you an overall question, and this applies globally. Do you really need explanations? I kind of find with comic book series, because you have P.D. Parker comes around several times. You have various iterations. Don't you just sort of suspend
Disbelief.
Yeah, which we'll talk about with this storyline too in a couple minutes. But
I don't. So
I don't think I need it explained.
I don't. It was so much in the fact that I was reading it, and so I'm not a big DC nerd at the end of the day. I'm more of a Marvel. I'm more of a Marvel nerd. If only just because I find the DC universe tends to be a lot more squeaky clean in a lot of its characters, versus where Marvel characters tend to have.
They're more nuanced.
They're a lot more nuanced. Again, I mean, my favorite example is always going to be the Fantastic Four when you look at it, because you've got Mr. Fantastic, which is meant to be like this 1940s, 50s father figure at the end of the day, this stern and unrigid sort of individual, but his superpower is to stretch and be the most malleable person in the world. You have the Invisible Woman, which is this person that is, for the lack of a better phrase, kind of a glamour puss, very model-esque, statuesque even, goes through all these different phases throughout the comics of being like this very beautiful, glamorous woman that fits the age. And her superpowers is to be invisible. You have, the most powerful element, you have one of the most natural, powerful elements in the hands of what would be a rebellious teenager. And then the most biggest, lovable, biggest character of everybody is also the guy that's the hardest, rockiest guy in the world,
Yeah.
that can't necessarily show this big, bright energy from him. No, he's a rock.
He's a rock.
And again, I find that dichotomy interesting because, Bruce Banner, this nerdy, geeky guy that transforms Dr. Jekyll style into this massive Hulk that, loses all aspect of any sort of logic, rationale, and greatness that is, Bruce Banner at the end of the day, in lieu of I get green and I punch things really hard, and
it's just brute force and anger.
Oh yeah, and absolute brute force and anger too.
Yeah.
And again, that's why I find Marvel heroes more interesting, because they're a lot more nuanced, and their powers come with some level of trade-off.
Well, see, and I think this is why the movie would have been more interesting if you didn't know that Diana was always going to do the right thing, and if you actually saw her toil over what decision to make rather than the decisions pretty much already made for her. I would have loved to have seen the conversation that says, "But we could have a normal life."
Absolutely, and I think that's a very missed opportunity at the end of the day.
Yeah. So we have Max Lord who actually, I wish they would have developed the relationship with his son more as well, because the son is just inserted in there. And even though that becomes a critical force at the end,
mm-hmm.
you don't get any sense at all that he genuinely loves or is proud of his son.
Or even so much that, and I agree with it. Yeah, the son is a nuisance.
He's not happy to see him.
No.
But
he truly loves it. But
I don't get the sense that he truly loves him.
You're meant to think that he truly loves him at the end of the day.
At the end, but maybe.
Yeah, again, it's a very contrived sort of... I really do think if they spent more time on that element here, one of the easiest ways you could have done that, especially in the very beginning of it, would have been that when he's there at the office, when the kid is there at the office, that this other guy who's in the background is like, no, don't you mention my son, or don't you say anything. He's like, you are a loser. No,
not in front of my child.
Not in front of my kid.
Not in front of my child.
Not in front of my kid.
Yeah.
Other stuff like that. You can see, you would give the impression more that the dad, that Maxwell Lord is really trying to present himself as a good figure at the end of the day, because he cares about what his son thinks about him even more. That you think that that he's trying to do everything he can for his son at the end of the day.
And he's about to lose his company.
Yeah, and he's very much about to lose his company, and about to, in theory, maybe go to jail and stuff like that from the FCC, but. You'd think that at a certain point here, you would have invested some, sideline of words to be able to better express the devotion that, Maxwell Lord has with his kid.
Well, and the kid's old enough to say, "Oh, you're a lousy father. Just fuck off."
Yeah, I mean, you would think that, but like no kid really wants to tell their parents that they're a loser.
And by the time you're like, he's what, 11, 12?
I was going to say like 9 or 10.
Really think that young? Okay.
I mean,
No, you're probably right. You're probably right.
I kind of at the end of the day,
He's old enough to get it, and
he's
knows,
he's very much aware of what's going on and what's kind of happening, and that like his dad is kind of not being honest about everything happening.
Yeah.
I think
he actually says at one point, "You don't need me to be proud of you. I love you anyway."
Yeah.
Which was kind of, as a kid, yeah, you want to be proud of your parents. That's totally untrue.
Yeah, I mean, like, you really
it
don't
doesn't
care
mean you base love on that, but you totally want to be proud of your parents.
Oh yeah, totally want to be proud of your parents, but I mean, like, you want to love them regardless whether you are proud of them or not in a lot of cases. But I think that does factor into a lot of, if you would love your parents or not, if you were semi-proud of them. I mean, like, if you're not proud of your parents, you're like, you might love them on paper, but like, do you really actually, approve of what they're doing? I mean, like, that might cloud.
Lots of people love people who they don't approve of what they're doing, but I thought it would. The line didn't ring true.
No.
So,
that particular, that's a very undeveloped thread.
So for whatever reason, Max Lord knows about the Dreamstone, knows that it's got power.
That it exists.
That it exists. He's been chasing it for years. Diana finds this out because she goes to his office to get it back, because Kristen Wiig is so desiring of love. And this is where I think if you had taken Diana's 12 minutes and parsed it up and given Kristen Wiig a backstory in which she wasn't loved, in which she wasn't wanted, this whole need to be loved so much that she allows Max Lord to take from the Smithsonian an object that the FBI gave them to research.
Yeah, because I mean, like, at a certain point here, you have to rationalize that no amount of love or no amount of affection is going to make you be like,
"Oh yeah, I'll just let you take that."
Yeah. Especially in the case that this is a person you've known for
a day,
24 hours at best, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, no. But I can't give that to you. This is something. This belongs to the FBI.
Yeah, it's
which
not
she
mine.
goes about saying, but she still just kind of just lets it go over this affection. Now that you're saying it even more so, I really do agree with you that, like, some backstory on that would have made more sense. Yeah, if you
understood how much she needed love and
affection or recognition of any sort of level here.
If you understood that on a deeper basis, would you understand her decision to do that more? Because to me, that decision rang untrue.
And mostly because, again, like, you only see, like,
he's slimy and pretty transparent about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's very transparent from him at the end of the day. And I agree with Kristen with, like, they show, like, maybe a few minutes of it with Kristen Wiig at the very beginning of it, but, like,
of her tripping carrying a box. She can't balance in shoes.
Well, she can't balance in heels, but she trips and her briefcase opens up and all these papers fly out and everyone kind of ignores her. And then even the person that apparently hired her the week before is like, doesn't recognize who she is at all, which is, again, very transparently weird, because, like, you just hired this person. Now like, she's such a nothing.
The message is she's such a nothing that you wouldn't remember her even if you had met her before.
Now, I think if they spend another, like, 5 or 10 minutes really kind of just digging that in, as far as, like, this is a person that's never been recognized at all, I think you could have gotten that message across better, maybe, without having to do maybe the backstory. But I agree that the backstory probably would have been a lot more helpful here at that point.
I just think, yeah, because the idea that she allows him to walk away with it, and then when Diana finds out he has it, she goes to get it back from him, and the stone itself is gone, but the cuff that kept it all together, which again is about the size of a bracelet, is still there, and it has on the inside of it something written in the language of the gods.
So there is an element here that I'm actually kind of pissed about, because it's another Chekhov's gun element here. Is that
I thought we might meet a god.
again, that was my thinking here too. Again, Chekhov's
I was
gun.
excited.
And again, here's my problem here was that, like, wait a second, you introduce this and you're not doing anything with it? What do you mean you're not doing anything with it? Why is this not like a reference point? Why is this not being brought up at all for any reason? Like,
So we know the gods cast magic on it, but okay, so it's a tool of the gods. It's a tool of what god?
Well, not even so much that is that
You do, I guess, kind of eventually figure out which god it's a.
Oh no, you eventually figure out
does.
what god it is, but like you kind of expect to either see the god or kind of rationalize. Okay, well, what did the gods do this for, or this particular god, this trickster or jokerish god? You know, what did he leave this behind for? You don't ever get to learn that element at all, and you never even and that entire element is completely dropped after it's even brought up. Like, it's never, we never take the bracelet back, and we never study it any further at all.
Or she doesn't want to even touch it.
Yeah, and it's a complete notion that's just like completely falls through the wayside, especially.
Well, I sat there when it was introduced. I went, "Oh, good, we're gonna go
more god stuff."
Yeah, we're actually gonna meet Loki. Because it seems like a Loki sort of thing.
It seems like a Loki sort of guy. I'm okay, like, hey, I'm okay with seeing like more god stuff, because that's a big element in Wonder Woman.
Yeah. I was excited by that. I thought, okay, now, because by then we're already an hour into the movie. Mm-hmm. More than.
Oh, yeah. And then the fact that we don't, I'm just kind of like...
I mean, we don't get into what Max Lord is trying to do with this thing until an hour into the movie.
So, I mean, like, at a certain point here, like...
That it actually has power. That
it actually has power, that it is actually doing anything.
Yeah,
I mean, like, like, you think... You eventually kind of figure out, like, oh, it is kind of like a monkey's paw sort of thing here once they... Because they have to say it. They literally say, oh, it's like a monkey's paw.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow.
Oh,
Could you
telegraph that any further?
Yeah, could you not, thank you for the expedition dump.
Yeah. Well, and I will tell you that part felt a little bit like you were talking down to the audience.
Oh yeah.
Just me, but that's how I
mean, like, what you could have done there is you could have done kind of a roundabout way of saying it here, like, like you could have, It's like that one monkeys thing. What monkeys thing? Well,
in that movie, you could have referenced.
It's a story. It's an old story. Like, you make a wish, but it doesn't. You don't get the version that you want. You don't reference it outright, but you make allusions to it instead of just saying it out loud. Yeah. I'm going to make a comment here, and I think this is trivial on a certain level, but where's her sword and shield?
Oh, that's interesting.
Where is Wonder Woman's sword and shield?
Well, she gets wings later.
I wish that was handled better too, but I mean, like,
oh yeah, no,
because it's a literal non-factor at a certain point here. Especially even in that part of the movie.
She can fly without them. She doesn't really.
So
she uses them as a shield, and then she dumps them.
And then she just drops them shortly there afterwards.
But we're jumping way ahead of ourselves.
We are jumping.
So Max Lord's whole thing is that he sells oil, that he writes to oil, and so who has more oil than Egypt in the 80s? Not a true thing. You would have gone to Saudi Arabia, but fine.
Yeah.
He goes to Egypt because it's easy to pop the pyramids in there. I've been to the pyramids at Giza.
It's also, again, it's
on a camel.
Good visual reference, I think.
Yeah, and so my thing was it was placed in Egypt specifically so you could have the pyramids at Giza reference.
Yeah.
Because you created this fake emir and all these things that didn't exist. So
we kind of got to talk about what Max Lord does with the rock, though, with the Dreamstone. What's called the Dreamstone here. So what Maxwell Lord does here is that he's actually given it quite a bit of thought here. That
he's been looking for it for years.
Yeah. So again, he's given it quite a bit of thought as far as what he wants it to do at the end of the day, and what he wants it to do at the end of the day is to make it, to become the Dreamstone for him to be able to grant the wishes, which eventually later gives him the ability to decide.
So the Dreamstone literally, he wishes to become the Dreamstone, and it literally dissolves into him.
Now, part of the Dreamstone here as well is that it's meant to. This at one point was supposed to be a nod to a character called the Sandman. So Sandman is a DC character that's the god of dreams. which is kind of what which kind of makes sense. Why it's called the Dreamstone, and it grants your wishes or your dreams. And then when Maxwell Lord absorbs it, it turns into sand all around you. So that was an illusion meant to be for that here.
Okay.
But so much is that now Maxwell Lord can actually grant the wishes, but he also decides what the punishment is. Yeah.
But you make the wish without knowing
that you're actually wishing it.
Well, he asks you to make a wish. He outright asks you to make the wish, but you don't know what the price for that you're paying is.
No, you never do.
So when you're talking about equivalencies, he doesn't explain that part, and to me that's really deceptive. It is like if you came up to me and said, "I'll grant you your wish, but it's going to cost you something."
Oh,
he doesn't even say it's going to cost you something. I would want to know. My response would be, well, what is it going to cost me? But he doesn't even tell them that there's going to be a cost, and he has to make the wishes.
He doesn't even tell them that you're actually doing a wish at all. He literally holds your hand. It's like, what is it that you wish for? And everyone's kind of saying it kind of like as an abstract sort of like, well, what if sort of thing. Yeah. Without actually realizing that he's actually granting. He's actually granting
them. And the spiteful part of him comes out pretty early too, because the guy who chews him out in his office for being a thief and a failure is the first person he goes and sees.
Yeah, and again, it's the literal trick of like, don't you wish for me to be successful? It's like, of course I wish for you to be successful, because you're successful, I'm successful. Great. So now I'm going to take your entire company and all your assets here, stuff. He's like, the hell you are? What the hell are you talking about? Sort of thing. And literally, then the next moment he's down in
the lobby.
In the lobby, and again,
U.S. Marshals.
With U.S. Marshals, and again, one of those U.S. Marshals, the robber in the very beginning of the movie. Because again, I saw him. Because again, you see him, and he's like, isn't that the guy that robbed the jewelry store in the very beginning of the movie?
That's cute.
That's the same guy.
I didn't catch that.
Yeah, that's the same guy. And then you look around and you're like, okay,
cheap budget.
Well, again, if you're meant to be an unforgettable character here, then you can be reused.
Yeah.
Up to a certain extent. Also, I figured out who I would have preferred Maxwell Lord to be played by.
Oh.
John C. Reilly.
That would be good.
Because I think again,
I would have liked to have seen him played by somebody who could give it a little bit more menace. Because
I think John C. Reilly is not known for being menacing. Again, if we're going to go back to this entire notion of people who don't normally act in these particular roles, I would love to see John C. Reilly in a superhero movie, just because I think he's a funny actor at the end of the day, and I think you could have given off that kind of that porch love that thinks he's a rich guy, but he's not really a rich guy, and so he's trying to get better. He's
definitely not Wolf of Wall Street.
No,
and I would have liked to have seen,
somebody a little less. I would have liked to see somebody a little less polished that's trying to look super polished.
I would have rather seen Gordon Gekko, actually.
Yeah, but then I think the illusion is too high there.
Too much. So because he just sort of until the very end, he hasn't really decided if he wants to be evil. He just wants.
Well, and so this is my other thing that comes up too, is that he is. I kind of understand the beginning where he's going to Egypt to get the oil, to try to get the oil to amass more money and power at the end of the day. But at a certain point here, it quickly turns to this notion that I have to keep granting wishes. I have to keep granting wishes. And
because I become more powerful with each wish.
I become more powerful. Well, not so much that
or I create more chaos.
I don't. But again, I don't even think that was the initial intention here. I think what's kind of ends up happening is that I keep granting more wishes, and I keep granting more wishes. So much as that, the stone is making him do that now, or at least that's what I got from the plot. Is something in him is trying to force him to do.
I didn't, but you're right, because otherwise the wishes are for the people and not for him. The one guy wishes for, I wish I had a farm, and so he ends up with a farm right outside his apartment building.
Yeah,
and the cows are munching by the fountain, and so there's all sorts of butterfly effect things going on here. Mm-hmm. But he goes to Egypt, and he talks to an emir, and he says, well, what is your deepest wish? Oh, I wish all my lands were restored. And he says, okay, so then I'm going to take all your oil. And he says, oh, I just already sold my oil to Saudi Arabia. They never do explain how he gets the oil from Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
That's never explained. But what ends up happening is that Wonder Woman and Captain Trevor go to what I believe
trying to chase after them.
But I believe where they went was the Smithsonian Air and Space, which is out by the airport. There are two Smithsonian Air and Space, and she works from the Smithsonian Museum. So I think that they're at the Air and Space out by the airport. There's one out by Dulles, and
they take a jet.
Okay, this so doesn't work for me because he knows nothing about modern aircraft. He knows nothing about electronic systems. He knows nothing about how to fly this plane. Nothing. No,
absolutely nothing. And yet somehow he gets into the cockpit and starts clicking buttons. He's like, this. Because again, keep in mind, 1925 airplanes versus 1984
not
airplanes.
Even 1925. The last time he flew an airplane was in World War One.
Yeah. Again, 1920s, right?
1918, 1919.
Okay, my apologies.
So you're literally talking about he hasn't flown a plane in 60 years. And planes have changed a little bit in 60 years. You've got all these computer systems,
avionics,
all these different things, and wing flaps.
Landing gear.
Wing flaps didn't even exist.
And
landing gear. And they show him taking off, and he manages to take off. She figures out that there's radar. That seemed like oh, that's a script. Oops, we need to correct that. And she is suddenly able to make the plane invisible. Because 60 years ago, her father showed her how to make a coffee cup invisible.
Well, she rationalized that because she's kind of the daughter of Zeus at the end of the day, or Ares. Again, I don't.
Which yeah.
I don't quite remember which immediately. I'm sure somebody.
Daughter of a god.
Daughter of a god. That they hid the mascara, and that she rationalized that she might be able to do it as well because she's part of that god.
She talks about having hidden a coffee cup once, but then she couldn't find it.
But she mentioned that offhand at that particular moment. If they mentioned it earlier one time, where it was again, perfect example here.
So what are your powers? Well, one of my powers, one time I made a coffee cup disappear.
Even better is that when Steve wakes up in bed, Deanna's kind of in the in the kitchen sort of area, trying to mess around with a coffee cup. It's like, what are you doing? Oh, I was waiting for you to get up. No, you were staring very intently at that coffee cup. What's up? It's like, oh, here's this backstory of me trying to hide a coffee cup.
Yeah.
And then when you get to the airplane here, it's like, again, it's like, oh, that's right, radar. Wait, let me try this. What are you going to try? Well, I'm going to try to hide it here. You said you couldn't do that. It's like, okay, I did it once, but I haven't done it again. Then it becomes becomes a callback that you feel rewarded for remembering.
It feels like somebody went, oh, there's a script error. They'd see this on radar.
I think there was also a reshoot at one point too.
Okay, so that was added footage.
I think there was some.
It felt like somebody went, oh, this doesn't quite work, but the whole thing doesn't quite work.
Well, I think it was somebody saying, hey, that invisible jet thing, we should probably make a reference to that.
Down with that. So as the plane's taking off, they're able to make it disappear. Mm-hmm. And
I'm surprised it has gas in it, in all honesty.
Well, okay, so that's amongst the things that didn't work for me. If it's sitting at the Smithsonian, it probably doesn't have enough gas to get you to Egypt.
Probably also doesn't have the weaponry.
I've flown from New York to Egypt, and it's like a 11-hour flight.
Yeah, it's not a short flight.
Yeah, it's not a short flight. So,
and that's a plane that won't be able to do that, regardless. Much less have a two-seater next to each other and not have. Why would you have a two-seater and not have anything behind you? You might as well just streamline it and have it, person in front, person in back.
Logistically, let's just agree.
Okay, yeah, it happens.
It doesn't work. Suspend all belief.
Yes.
And he lands it. It isn't even that he gets it to take off. Okay, he's gotten planes to take off before. He can probably figure that out. Probably not, but okay, let's say he does. How in the does he figure out how to land it?
Mm-hmm.
In Cairo.
In Cairo, where do you land it?
Well, how does he even know how to navigate to Cairo? In the dark, it's night.
And again,
I mean,
like you said,
you're
it's not
flying
a
towards the
short flight.
sun, so it's probably, light by the time he lands. But and more than light, it actually probably midday. But there are thermals on that airport because it's hot. It's at the edge of the Sahara Desert, so just so we're keeping real.
Mm-hmm.
How does he know to navigate over the Atlantic? So for lots of reasons, because he doesn't know how to use a computer, it didn't work for me. But let's suspend disbelief and say, okay, that's what happens. So she ends up seeing Max. They buy the car from the taxi guy, and
for not a lot of money either.
And Egypt's a poor country. So they buy the car from the taxi guy, and they chase down Max Lord, who has the security forces of the Emir. That's what he took from the Emir. So he left the Emir without any security forces, and the Emir has had his land restored to him, but unfortunately that means that all the walls were restored and people are going without water.
Yeah, and Bonker's trying to get back to what would have been their original home as well.
Yeah, because now there's an impenetrable wall, and it's cut off rivers and all sorts of things. There are all sorts of butterfly effect stuff. They are in the desert, in the Sahara Desert, with tanks. So the Emir's forces have tanks.
Not tanks, I would say like armored carriers, maybe.
Okay,
or
armored carriers
vehicles.
with missile launchers.
Yeah,
Surface-to-air missile launchers.
Well, it's a dangerous country after all. We can nod.
Yeah, and none of the solar panels I saw when I was there. The desert's full of solar panels, which makes sense.
Yeah, totally makes sense.
But and this is where she learns that she's slowly losing her powers, and that's the price she has paid for the wish that she inadvertently made.
Yeah.
To have Steve back. So, you learn there. You don't. She calls, so she gets. They have the obligatory battle. Max Lord gets away, but everybody lives because it's Wonder Woman and everybody has to live.
Mm-hmm.
And the battle scenes, I thought, because I realize you have to have them.
But they serve no narrative purpose.
They serve no narrative purpose. They don't move the story along at all. They're just battle scenes, and that's true of all of them.
Yeah.
Pretty much. So
it doesn't feel like a good reason to have this battle scene here, and it's very much one of these cases where you didn't need to you have the invisible jet. You could have very easily gone to the airport and gotten on a plane pretty quickly here at the end of the day. I think that element there is just to get the invisible jet. But again, you go to this remote place, how did you know he was even there?
Actually, she figures that out.
Because they break into his office and they see
They don't even break into his office. They just walk in.
They just walk into the office. They see a boarding pass in there.
Yeah, they see a boarding pass for...
Which you would think he would have the boarding pass with him.
Exactly. And she knows what he's going for. She figures it out. So then she calls Barbara from Cairo and says, "Did you find out any of the history of the stone?" And Barbara says, "Yeah, I can find references to it in all these different locations." And she starts listing them off. I find these references to them. And the last person who was known to have had it is Regulus, Roman gladiator, Roman emperor. And there's a guy in L.A., a Mayan shaman, who says he knows something about the stone.
Yeah.
So Diana quickly figures out that all the places she listed as having some sort of reference to the stone were all civilizations that collapsed.
Yeah.
And that's when she really realizes what the stone is capable of and has done in the past. Mm-hmm. And so she says, "Okay, well, I'll see you in L.A." So there's no explanation of how they get from Cairo to LA. Invisible jet. He can fly. He's an amazing pilot. They got free gas. Whatever. It's a little bizarre. But in their flying conversation on the way to Cairo is a cute little scene in which she says, "Well, planes always amaze me. I don't understand how they work." And he says, "No, once you start flying, it's actually very easy because you just let the wind catch you and take you, and
when you go from there, yeah."
It makes it sound very zen. And so, anyway, they end up in L.A., and of course, with all her things, she can read Mayan glyphs. Now, you and I have been to the Mayan world several times.
Yeah.
On several ruins.
I'm calling BS on this book.
Well, the book is printed. Come on. Like, when did the book get printed all in Mayan glyphs? Even if the book looks old, it's a printed book bound in a modern style.
With Mayan glyphs everywhere.
With Mayan, all written, totally written.
Totally written in Mayan. And no yellowing on any of the paper.
Well, and the last really well-known Mayan civilization was 600, 800. I think you go all the way to 900 AD. And by the time the Spanish arrived in the Americas, it was pretty much gone. Mm-hmm. They pretty much died due to ecological crisis. We saw the size of their cities.
Oh yeah.
And they basically overpopulated and destroyed things. So, but he says, she reads the book, and he says that he was told by his grandfather that the stone was buried, and was a disaster, and was buried, and was never to be resurrected, and never to be dug out. Mm-hmm. And she reads in the Mayan text about what the stone does.
Yeah.
And she figures out from something that Max Lord said that because he tells her, "I am the stone," and so she knows where he's going because she's telepathic, I guess. It's unlisted talent. She figures out that he's going next to the White House.
No, what happens first there is that they get back home.
Home is DC.
Home to DC. Relatively quickly too. Again, I mean, like someday
you have no sense of passing of time.
No, and then that's probably one of those things that annoyed me because like it felt like maybe a day or two.
Yeah.
It felt like maybe like at most a week passed, but like things, if you rationalize it, probably took the better part of a couple of like maybe 2 weeks to go through it. Maybe.
Yeah.
Especially if the notion here is that you're trying to introduce, Steve Trevor to modern society. Would have felt it was longer. Would have been nicer.
Well, because they go to the Smithsonian Air and Space in D.C.
Yeah.
And he gets to see a rocket ship.
And he's just amazed by it.
He is amazed, yeah.
No, I mean, so eventually, like, they get back to D.C. and, they're trying to get that conversation. This is where they also kind of introduce the wings as well.
And they talk to Barbara.
They talk to Barbara, and Barbara's like, "No, I'm not giving this." But meanwhile, Barbara has also become far more aggressive and
she has figured out what she can do. She now understands she has Diana's strength.
Yeah, I think it also at this point here as well. She's also kind of put 2 and 2 together here and been like, "Oh, you're that person everyone keeps talking about."
Yeah.
That's
you're Wonder Woman.
Yeah. Also, an interesting notion here for Barbara here as well is that if you notice throughout as the movie goes on, she starts wearing more and more animal prints and furs and stuff like that.
And boots.
And boots. And high heels.
Yeah.
That is somewhat of a reference to the first Cheetah, which was Priscilla Rich, I believe is the name. Yeah, Priscilla Rich, who was another individual who also enjoyed wearing furs, and she became Cheetah by wearing a magical cheetah costume. So I find that kind of interesting in that particular point. So yeah, Max Lord at this point here is trying to grant wishes to any and everybody of pure power in order to, I guess, amass more power.
He wants the president's power, Well, he grants a number of wishes inside his office, Porsches, all sorts of things that are opulent.
Yeah.
And then he figures out he wants the ultimate authority.
But I don't even know how he gets to that rationale at the end of the day here. Like, I don't understand why.
Well, I think you're right. I think the stone must, of sorts, have that
you need to keep granting wishes sort of element, and you need to keep granting bigger and bigger wishes. Like, it would have been nice to...
Sort of the Midas touch sort of thing.
It would have been nice that while they were talking with the Mayan shaman guy, that, like, they kept saying, you know, it's like, well, once the stone makes a wish, it kind of gets the taste of blood. It wants more. It wants to create more wishes, and it'll do anything it can.
It'll possess you.
It'll do anything it can to keep granting more and more wishes, and that, you know, like,
because he does seem kind of possessed. You're right.
Yeah, and like, it's clearly like the fact of making these wishes are also kind of ruining his body almost, because like you start seeing him get like blood in his eyes and blood dripping out of his nose and ears at one point. Like, clearly the stone is having a much...
It's taking his health.
It's taking a toll on him.
Well, and that's...
But it's never explained at all.
Well, and see, and I figured that was when he made his wish, he didn't know what price he was paying, and the price he was paying was his health.
Yeah. Which would make perfect sense at the end of the day here. I really do think that if they had this element here where, like, I gotta keep making more wishes. I gotta keep making bigger wishes. You know, like I gotta
get more and more people making wishes.
I gotta keep people making more and more wishes. Maybe that's what's going to fix my health. Maybe.
Well, I think he needed other people making wishes so that he could get his health.
Yeah,
was the inference I got.
And eventually, I think that is,
and it is what it starts happening.
Yeah, and so that's eventually what kind of happens here.
But he goes to the president, and he gets in.
Yeah.
Because he had somebody wish. Don't you wish I could see the president?
It's like, yeah, I wish you could see it too.
Yeah.
It's like, thank goodness. Wait, hold on. Did you make a wish? It's like, yeah, just yesterday I got a Porsche. What's everyone up with Porsches? I found that to be kind of a funny little nod.
Porsche was a thing of the 80s. It was very much a thing of the 80s.
Oh, yeah. I absolutely understand it as the thing of the 80s here. Like, I like that little nod at the end of the day. Like, I do kind of appreciate, again, going back to the 80s sort of nods at the end of the day. So yeah, he goes and gets to see an audience with the president, which is not an easy feat typically.
But he's able to walk right in.
Just walks right in, and everyone's just kind of, you know, and the president's just like, yeah, I'll give all my power to you. And everyone kind of looks around and is like, 25th Amendment? Who wants to start that shit right now?
Everyone's
very much.
But what he wishes for is more nuclear warheads.
Yeah, or I wish I had more nuclear warheads in power. I mean, that would stop. The Russians. You know,
I have all these problems. I've got problems in Egypt, which of course is this guy starting it, and the Russians have problems with Egypt because that's everybody's source of oil.
Yeah,
and oil. You know, we had just undergone gas embargoes during the 70s, in which we had gas rationing. And you could only buy gas if you had an even number car on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and if you had an odd number car Tuesday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and we had gas rationing and speed limits were dropped to 55 miles an hour because that was a speed at which everybody's car was more fuel efficient. And so during the 80s, oil embargoes, oil control was huge. And so it would have started. There's not much context given there.
No, yeah, but it would have been what could have very well started wars and stuff
with
like
Russia
that.
And everything else. So, so just to give that some
context.
Yeah.
But eventually, what ends up happening here is that Maxwell Lord Welly's in the presidential office. They just happen to be showing off this new, fancy-fangled satellite technology that can broadcast and take over any screen out there.
But it isn't just that it takes over screen; it spreads particulates that touch people.
They can touch.
Because Max has to be touching you when you make your wish.
Yeah. Ah.
So Max figures out that will qualify as touch, or he hopes it'll qualify as touch.
Yeah.
And he's going to take a helicopter
to get there. And who gets to the White House but both Diana and Steve
and
Cheetah, or eventually Barbara eventually. Yeah. Now, I don't understand how Barbara gets in at the end of the day. I find that part to be odd. I don't know why Steve is literally.
I mean,
sidekick.
Diana and Steve get in because Carl's been trying to pick up Diana for a while.
Yeah.
And she calls Carl and arranges for a private tour because she wants to see some artifact.
Yeah. But I don't know why Steve's there with her. Outside of, like, plot reasons.
It's all. Yeah.
Like, you would think that, like, okay, well, let me stay here and let me follow the news and I'll get, and so I can tell you what's kind of happening. Or, like, no, it'd be too much danger for you to be here, which literally happens.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, don't quite understand him being there necessarily.
Doesn't move the plot along. But it does kind of, I guess.
It moves the
They
plot.
have another one of those long. The battles in there are 3 major battle scenes, and they all seem long. 4.
They seem long and they seem oddly inefficient.
Yeah.
Like it kind of understand. I mean, at a certain level, if we go back to like one of the first fight scenes that they have there, like Wonder Woman is swinging around from place to place. She's punching these 2 guys and then coming back over to these 2 guys and dealing with them and then jumping back around over here. It's like, aren't you Wonder Woman? Can't you just kind of like...
But she won't kill him, so...
No, I'm not saying that she kills him necessarily, but you would think that, like, you would knock him out or do something about them and then move on to the next one. It's very inefficient.
He's always sort of helping her and doing...
Now, Steve Trevor, yes. Now, he is helping her and everything, and I can appreciate that if you're underpowered for what you were beforehand, like, it would take longer maybe to do stuff.
Yeah.
So I do kind of appreciate that at the end of the day. It's just that her attacks are very inefficient for what she's doing. You would think that somebody who is supposed to be this Amazonian, where like when they were doing stuff, they again, you go back to the first Wonder Woman movie,
yeah.
Like one knock and one punch and those Nazis were those Germans were out.
Oh, yeah.
Like there was little issue with taking people out.
Yeah.
And stuff, and even underpowered. I mean, like you would think that she'd still go through all the same motions and be efficient about it, and maybe just spend a little more time on one individual at a time rather than jumping around from person to person to person.
The one plot thing that does move forward is that both Max and Cheetah figure out what the cost to Wonder Woman is and what her wish was.
Yeah,
they both do sort of recognize that. And they both try to manipulate that. They both do.
Yeah.
So they get down at the White House. Max escapes. Cheetah escapes.
Cheetah willingly goes along with him.
Goes with him in the helicopter. And when she gets in the helicopter, he looks like he's... I actually liked how that was played because he looks like he's not really sure...
What she's there for.
What she's there for. And it isn't until she kind of seductively asks, may I join you?
Yeah, may I join you? He's like,
yeah,
sure, yeah, okay. Let's see where this goes.
But at first, he doesn't go, oh, thank goodness you're here. You'll save me. You'll protect me. Instead, he's a little, and I liked that reaction. So I thought that was well played. Mm-hmm. So they go back to, Steve and Diana go back to Diana's place. He sees she's got a whole room of monitors. And
no, not at that point. That's before going to the
before
White.
That? Okay.
That's all. That's all before that because that's where they also introduce the wings. She tells the story of.
But you don't really see that
Artemisia.
they're wings. You see that there's something.
You see that there's something, but you get like a flashback to it.
Yeah, you get a flashback to Asteria.
Yeah, and so it's them leaving the White House here as they're walking kind of through DC, and they see how crazy DC has gotten because of all these wishes.
Chaos everywhere, and people are beating people up.
Mm-hmm. That, like, that this is where Diana's like, okay, I renounce my wish, sort of aspect of it.
He tells her, you know what has to happen here. There's a big, beautiful world out there. You need to be in it, and I'm not really here. And at one point, he tells her, you know what you have to do, and really, I'm already gone.
Yeah. And
they have one last kiss, and you don't see him again.
No. In fact, actually, the voice that you hear that calls out to her is actually the original voice, which is okay. As a tangent here, like, we never learned who this other guy is at all, who they've just kind of hijacked his body.
Yeah.
And they make like, and there's no sort of like discussion ever at all about like
what happened to him. It's not like Heaven Can Wait, where there's an explanation for.
Yeah, I mean, like you literally just kidnapped this guy's body for the better part of a week.
And she sees him as he used to look.
Yeah.
She says, "When I look at you, all I see is the original you."
Yeah.
But when he's first introduced and looking for her,
it's the other guy.
It's the other guy. And you know that that's going to come back again, too. Come on. We all know that that's a plot device that's going to come back.
Hopefully.
Well,
there was a logic at one point here that this was supposed to be the guy.
He does come back.
He does. And this guy at one point was in, I think there was discussion about this guy potentially being Hal Jordan, which would have been the Green Lantern at one point. And again, a lot of this would have made sense for, because again, like you go back to and say like he's some sort of engineer, which might have explained why. Steve...
Oh, but they make it very clear when Steve is in his apartment when he first comes back. This guy is narcissistic, has pictures of himself everywhere.
That's not unlike who Hal Jordan was at one point.
Really, and the guy has a very casual pop wardrobe.
The 80s.
Yeah, but it's the ultimate sort of pop wardrobe.
Yeah, again, I mean, kind of at the end of the day here, like...
They have a hard time putting together a decent outfit.
A lot of people would have liked it to be Hal Jordan or some sort of allusion to somebody else, maybe. Yeah. Just so that way you could say, like, oh, this wasn't just any character that's been interacting with Wonder Woman. This was a known character that was interacting with Wonder Woman here, like,
and you never, and I should say, when they bring it back as a plot device, I was afraid they were going to bring it back as a love interest for her, and as much as it's hinted at, it isn't done.
Thank goodness.
Yeah,
so,
I felt relieved as well.
So Steve disappears, and Wonder Woman gets back all of her powers, and you see her start quickly healing from the gunshot wounds that she's collected.
Not a scar on her,
and
she goes flying.
And now this is the problem I have. This is one of the things I had a problem with here.
Okay.
Is that she goes flying for what feels like the better part of a couple hours while all the shit is going down.
All this shit is going down below her, and she's ignoring it while she's experiencing what Steve told her was the Zen-like experience of flying. She uses the lasso of truth to originally boomerang herself off of a high rise, and then she gets in the clouds, and she's able to use the lasso of truth to boomerang her off of other clouds. And then
she's like a propeller almost, and then she's kind of like...
And she does the Superman pose several times. The outright Superman pose with the left arm out straight and the right arm cocked up against her body. And it is absolutely the Superman pose. But
she's just flying.
At one point, she's like on her back flying. She's on her front flying. She's all just kind of enjoying it.
And then, like, somehow or another, she realizes where, she can hear and where they are eventually. And then she goes back home, gets the armor.
But they don't show her going back home and getting the armor.
No, like...
She just suddenly shows up at where... let's talk about how dystopian where she shows up is. This turns out to be where Max Lord is broadcasting from.
Yeah.
But it looks like Lord of the Rings.
It's in a very secluded, heavily forced area. It's
dark.
A bunker.
It's a mountain.
It's a random bunker somewhere.
It looks very Lord of the Rings. It does.
I don't know about Lord of the Rings. It looks very jungle-esque.
Dark.
It was dark. It was
foreboding.
It's
rocky.
It's right alongside of a waterfront, which doesn't make any sense.
There's a gorge.
Yeah, like why you wouldn't build a base here? You wouldn't build some
secret bunker.
You wouldn't build a secret secluded kind of bunker here.
It doesn't feel like it's on American soil, but it is.
Yeah, that too. And also that it's relatively close, because again, keep in mind they get onto like Marine One, which is a helicopter, which is not meant for long flights. It's really kind of meant for it's somewhat of a glorified taxi to go from the White House
to Andrews
to Andrews Air Force Base. So it's not like it has a lot of gas. So like you kind of suppose that this is still somewhere nearby. Like maybe this is
Appalachian?
Pennsylvania, Virginia, maybe, like, you know, somewhere not too far away.
Yeah.
Because the end of the movie, they get back to DC really goddamn effing quick.
Yeah.
But again, like, we never really established where Maxwell Lord's business is at. Like, I always kind of assumed it was in, like, it's obviously outside of DC, but still
Maryland,
West Virginia, maybe. Like, it's still very easy to get there.
Yeah.
You know, it's still very easy to say, like, get in a taxi cab or something and drive for a couple hours to get there.
Not even a couple hours, yeah.
You know, maybe 2 or 3 hours, maybe a 2 or 3 hour drive, maybe. So it's very easy to get to there, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So I'm like, and then we get, you know, and then Wonder Woman just kind of appears in this armor
without any real explanation. She is wearing Asteria's armor.
Yeah, she's kind of there, just like plop in Asteria's armor with no. Because again, I mean, like again, if you knew a fight that you were getting into, you might get more armor, knowing that it was going to be a bigger deal. Versus, if you didn't know what you were getting, you know, if you didn't have the time to, and you were just kind of getting there thinking like, well, okay, I got all my stuff. I know what I'm doing when I get there, and not needing it. Like, I really do think the armor was just to say, like, we need Wonder Woman to look different. We can't just make subtle changes to it. We got to have her wearing something. We got to have her.
It is a total body armor.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
And she doesn't. And how they show her using it is they show her repeatedly pulling the wings all the way around her to shelter her like a shield as Cheetah goes at her.
Oh, well, then we get the introduction to Cheetah.
Yeah.
So, you know, so Barbara at this point has said, like, you know, like, I don't want to be a normal person anymore. I want to be.
She has asked Max
Apex
to make
Predator.
her. Yeah.
I want to be the Apex Predator. Okay, I'm going to call BS on whatever CGI that they've used to do this here, and it's one or two steps.
Her body is fur.
It's all no. Okay, this is 1 to 2 steps above Cats.
I actually thought about Cats when I saw it.
Now the face doesn't look doesn't look like feline at all.
No, although it does have stripes on it.
It does have stripes on it, but like. The faces feel very recognizable as being Kristen Wiig at the end of the day, not like wearing Cats. Like, you could tell, like, it was Judi Dench, but clearly it was a cat Judi Dench. Yeah. Like, there's no there's no feline sort of aspect to it at all. But like this thing wouldn't, you know, this look at the end of the day wouldn't look weird in Cats. It really wouldn't. This was my biggest disappointment, that you didn't, that like at no particular point did Cheetah look like Cheetah. It was this very kind of blonde cheetah-esque fur sort of thing.
Yeah.
I was expecting something a little more golden with a lot more pronounced, you know, spots on it and sleek sort of thing. And this one was very hairy and like I really like. And one of the other real annoyances that I had for this as well was that it's shot at night, which is always a bad time to shoot anything.
Right.
So everything gets darkened out at the end of the day, so you don't really get to see her properly at all. And that she doesn't look like a femme fatale. She looks like she's just wearing a really hairy.
She looks like she's in cosplay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Very bad cosplay as well.
Yeah.
And this is, and she doesn't get the mug for the camera at all. Like, you know, like I've become the Apex Predator now, and just have this kind of sultry sort of like seductive sort of walk sort of thing, and then kind of her just kind of like brandishing claws all of a sudden, and then going out Wonder Woman. Like we never get that at all.
Well, and it's where I wish she played it so straight up, and without any nuance, and it's where I wish we had some nuance. And you mentioned the Princess Diaries. Well, what would this role have been if you had Anne Hathaway in it?
I think
if you had a more, I want to say, for lack of a better word, a better actress.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could have. I mean. I will go down on record saying that any woman could look beautiful and could probably pull off a femme fatale look given the right tools available to them at the end of the day. I do honestly believe that that's fully capable at the end of the day. It's not so much the look so much as that the presentation at the end of the day. And I just don't think that this presentation of Kristen Wiig at the end of the day is what gave her the most bang for your buck here at the end of the
Yeah.
day. I do agree that if you had gotten somebody else in this role, now also keep in mind, like they've also somewhat casted this role based off of Gal Gadot as well, because again, you're not gonna get a person to play against Gal Gadot who's not also going to be 5'9", 5'10" in that ballpark, because keep in mind that like the average height for women is probably going to, and I'm
5'4" to 5'6".
5'4" to 5'6", right?
Yeah.
Now, if you want somebody to be able to look eye to eye with Gal Gadot at the end of the day, who's also wearing heels,
Right.
Like, and let's assume that she's
At one
6 feet
point,
tall.
at one point, her boots are platform, which I thought was a cool. Or they're not even boots. They're
These wedge platform thingies.
yeah,
So
which is a call out to the '80s as well.
Well, now, mind you, though, like, so I follow this one person on YouTube that is not a fight choreographer, but she does stage fighting.
Uh-huh.
And so she goes through all the stuff about how like stage fighting works and how
Yeah.
when they shoot movies, like how they're doing stuff and why it's interesting in here. And her big annoyance with superhero movies is that every single woman wears these chunky wedge heels that are meant to make it look like boots that you're wearing flat on the ground.
Yeah.
And that and obviously again, because again, when you look back at Henry Cavill, you look back at Ben Affleck here, they're both over 6 feet tall, and Gal Gadot is 5'9". So you want to give an extra 2 or 3 inches, so that way she stands of a similar stature to them at the end of the day, eye to eye almost.
Okay.
And so, and especially like they're not going to change the entire costume in that particular case at this point here, because they've given the aspect that she is this tall, statuesque sort of person. So you kind of have to choose a person who's similarly tall and statuesque as well, almost. And I
don't mean to imply that I think Kristen Wiig did a bad job, because I think she did a good job.
We think that there was other opportunities for other actresses that might have fit this better,
who might have given it a more nuanced, more empathetic. I couldn't empathize with.
I still don't think that even if you put somebody else in the role, I don't think it would have gotten any more empathetic. I think the empathetic part here is just an element
Might
of
have
the
gotten
story.
more interesting.
Possibly more interesting. And I also, again, like I'm also really kind of bummed out about this notion about the cheetah aspect here. Like I really would have wanted, like,
she's got a tail. She doesn't use it.
No. What I really wanted to have happen here was I really wanted to have. This goes back to Iron Man, where you have Iron Man at the very end of the first Iron Man movie, where he fights off against Ironmonger. Now, it's much better, like it's not too dissimilar here to Wonder Woman, where like they're supposed to be mirror opposites of one another.
Yeah.
And like, but you get this very short fight between them, and it's very unsatisfying because you would have liked to have seen them had more scraps with each other or more, bits or banters between them. And again, it would make more sense why Wonder Woman at the end of the day would go, we have to get the armor, get Apollonia or Artesia's armor, if she knew what she was getting into. Like, if you know what you're getting into, yeah, you're gonna get more stuff. But if you don't know what you're getting into, and you assume everything,
she knows that Barbara's growing in strength, though.
So what I would,
and she knows that Barbara's not going to recant.
So what I think though is that like if but she knew she wasn't going to recant back when they were talking to the Mayans. So again, if Barbara had gone to Max Lord and gone to him at that point, he was like, "Look, she's trying to stop you, and I don't want her to stop you because I'm not going to give up my wish either here, because I don't want my wish to go away either." So
you could have had that.
You could have
had that in the helicopter.
No. You have that beforehand. So what you do is you have that before they go to the White House.
Oh, okay.
And Barbara's the one who kind of gets him to think, why are you dealing with these small timers here? You should get, what's bigger, you're going for a televangelist and you're going for these businessmen. You need to go for the president. And that's the reason why you're right. I should go, you're right. That's going to be where I'm going to get more power from. And that's where you go to the president. And along the way here, she's like, and he's like, well, how can I repay you? And that's where you start talking about the wish element here, and that's where you first get the introduction of Cheetah in the White House. Because I think that would make a lot more sense at the end of the day. That
it would give it more explanation because Cheetah just sort of
happens. Yeah. And again, it works better there because if you think about what Kristen Wiig is doing there, it's a lot of monologuing and talking there. Like, if that was Cheetah at that particular point, and, like, you were able to see this feminine grace at the end of the day, like, it would make a whole lot more sense, I think, that when you get to the final battle between the two of them, that's why Wonder Woman has to get the extra armor, and that's why so that way she's better prepared for Cheetah here now. Because you know that Cheetah's following along with Maxwell Lord at that point.
And because Cheetah has wished for to be more like Diana, she's got Diana's powers.
Yeah.
She doesn't have a lasso of truth, but she's got Diana's powers.
Yeah.
So the battle between them is fairly epic, and then shortly after the battle ends, you get this flash to the past of Max Lord where you see his childhood.
Well, not okay. Well, so Back to the Future here, as far as the movie goes, like, so we get this really short, like 2-minute fight between the two of them. You get like a minute. You get like the first minute of Cheetah just like literally going to town on Diana. Diana's very much of the opinion here at this point. Where it's like, well, I can't kill you. I can't. You know, I'm not gonna kill you. I'm not gonna hurt you. You know, this is not your fault. This is not who you are. And then eventually
Diana lets her beat on her for a while.
Yeah, and then Diana just kind of gets to the point where it's like, okay, this is enough. There's no logic or notion, or there's, you know, Kristen. You know, you could have had Cheetah at this point, like, you know, like, I've become so much better. I've become more stronger. Like, I'm better than you now. I'm the Apex Predator of everything. You know, and like, and there's nothing that's going to do to stop me here, and you're never going to be able to stop me because you can't give up your one wish as well. And then she realizes that, like, oh, I have to make her give up her one wish, and that's me having to actually get serious and ditch the wings and actually do.
But she already gave up her one wish. She gave up Steve.
Yeah, but again, it's Kristen Wiig's logic here that, like, you know, because again, like, they all know what it is now, and so Kristen Wiig kind of torturing Diana with that logic here could be enough to get her to that point to stop her. And then you get to the point where
he's already gone.
You know, yeah, he's already gone. You know, you don't even need to say it. You can almost just kind of
feel it
almost from that point. And then so again, you get about a minute of Cheetah just going to town on Diana, and then finally Diana decides to get semi-serious. And again, I don't understand this notion of, like, oh, let me get away and let me start swinging around because I have the lasso of truth. It's like, could you just keep it on the goddamn floor? You could have all these great fights where, like,
she's got wings.
Well, not by this point.
Well, no, she drops the wings, and I don't understand why she just, like, unceremoniously drops the wings.
I think because they're so badly damaged at that point that they're more of a hindrance then.
Oh, okay.
I also think it's also kind of metaphorical. It's like, okay, I'm not a
Asteria.
now I'm going to actually fight you, you know, sort of thing. But again, I mean, like, I think it would have been more interesting if that Cheetah was the one that was moving around everywhere and Diana was having to react to her, versus, like, both of them at that point are kind of like on ropes, just kind of like moving around and occasionally kind of like batting
on electrical lines.
Yeah, like, this is a chance in which I thought the fight could have been a lot more interesting.
Seemed over long.
It seemed really short.
Really?
Okay, it's short in the aspect that it's only like a couple minutes long, but it's so drawn out that it's just so bad.
Yeah.
So the way Wonder Woman gets rid of Cheetah is she electrocutes her in
the water. She apologizes first. I'm sorry to do this to you, because she gives her the chance to recant. Yeah. And the deal is, I don't know if we explained this, that in order you can take back your wish, and then things go back.
You have to say, I recant my wish.
I recant my wish.
Yeah. And so now, mind you, Maxwell Lord has,
but Cheetah refuses.
Yeah. So Maxwell Lord is down in the bunker, and he's reached out to everybody. And here's the thing that was the nitpickiest thing of all to me here is that they turned CTR monitors into TVs.
Yeah.
For 1984, green and black monitors were a thing. You can't get color picture on those things, much less proper resolution, to be able to portray anything. That was literally the...
Oh, that is nitpicky.
I get that that's nitpicky, but I mean, like...
But he literally sits there and says, "Look into my eyes."
Mm-hmm.
And he's figured out that these particles, because this is what the president explained to him, actually touch people. So he's telling them, just look into my eyes and make a wish. Well, one guy wishes, I wish you'd die.
Yeah.
And literally this woman
Passes over. It was a heart attack at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, this is the weird aspect of this particular element, because it's not as if anything goes back to normal. It's as if everything goes back to normal, but, like, all
The
this
damage is
shit
done.
happened.
Damage is done.
Yeah.
Because people do one by one start eventually recanting.
Yeah.
In the meanwhile, she's trying to have a logical discussion with Max Lord, who's still in the throes
Of all this power, in
of
theory.
this power. And you're right, he seems possessed by the stone at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And you see these pictures, you get the montage of his past, which shows his father beating his mother, shows him being berated for wetting the bed.
Kind of an ostracized kind of child, because he didn't have what other kids had at the time, and that.
No friends at school. Shows him. It doesn't actually show him being bullied. It just implies
being
that he
picked
was
on.
not even picked on, though. Well, I guess the one scene with it does show him a little bit, but it's not. He's not like
getting
a full-on
sort of thing.
Yeah, it's more kids walking past him and mocking
Yeah,
him.
look at your shoes, or what are you eating, weirdo?
Yeah, but it isn't like being pushed or being shoved or being called names. It's
And then he's trying to start a business, and you don't really, and then that's where it stops, because it's like, wouldn't it be interesting to see, like, that he kept trying and that he kept trying,
Yeah.
sort of thing. Like, I always like the bad guys which think they're doing the right thing because they've just been kicked down a hole the entire time.
And they're able to justify.
They're able to justify why they're doing this. I don't really have any justification about why Max Lord did this outside of, well, I've tried everything else and now I'm just going to go the magic route and just hope that this works.
That montage didn't give me any empathy for him, and I think that did feel to me like an ad.
Oh yeah, no, it very much felt like an ad. It very much felt like that was something that
something was
added on.
inserted because people said, I can't empathize with this character, and yet it didn't make me empathize with this character, because it didn't. I'd have been more impressed if it had been more fittingly a wealthy dad who was ignoring his child, and the child wasn't able to get his attention.
Mm-hmm. Like, you couldn't get his attention, or even so much as that, like, you kept seeing this guy try, and he was doing everything theoretically right, but that nothing just was working out for him at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like, if you saw him going into these business meetings, like, all high and everything, and then, like, they just kind of leave it, it's like, but no, wait, no, I have this big plan and everything. Like,
It felt added
it needed
in.
more.
Okay, so
That
it felt to me like it was added in and it didn't add anything.
It felt as if, like, if you wanted to make me empathize with him, you don't show me what he was like as a kid. You show me what he was like as an adult, because you as much as your childhood changes who you are at the end of the day here, like, your adulthood really, especially your teenage and your adult years really are where you can be held more accountable for what you come up and do.
See, and I felt like you could show him having a fun conversation where he says, oh, come on, please, I need something to go my way. I just need something to go my way.
Exactly, yeah. And more with this kid too. Like, if you had more scenes with this kid, like how excited he was for his kid's birthday party or something, like, you saw him being the most happiest guy in there, while, like, his wife was kind of, like, frumpy, kind of looking sort of aspect to that here, or that, like, or them clearing out his business at one point where it was thriving, and now they've cleared everything out of it here. It's like, the rent's due, like,
Yeah.
If you got more aspects of him trying to be as successful as possible and just not making it, I kind of would have understand.
Yeah.
I would have felt a little more empathy for him, and especially, and you had to mix something in there with this kid, because again, that would have been the best
felt
part
like there
for
was
it.
such a disconnect between him and the kid.
Because again, at the end of the day here, he leaves the kid at the office
In the care of one of his employees.
and then
Every time the kid arrives, he pretty much isn't available.
no.
And so then
It's not
you're
even really, I mean, the real big thing you could have easily done there is you just leave a picture of your kid on the table. You and your kid prominently, a picture of you and your kid on the desk that you can look back to frequently and be like, like, that's my son. I love my son.
Yeah.
I have to see him on a daily basis, sort of thing. Or just so much as that, like,
Whereas he actually says when his son arrives at his office, he says, well, like, is it the weekend already? Is it every weekend?
it's more like a nuisance sort of element.
Yeah,
here.
he doesn't want to see him. He makes it very clear he just really doesn't want to see him.
Yeah.
So in the end, Diana's trying. She can't fight him. He's protected himself with a whirlwind. And
she somehow gets his lasso around his foot.
Yeah, she's managed to lasso the television cameras, so he's no longer on camera, but he can be heard, and they can be heard. And he doesn't realize the lasso's around his foot, but she started to talk about recanting wishes and the cost of the wishes and all those things. And he says, "I'm not hearing you." She said, "Well, no, but they are." And he realizes that people around the world are starting
to recant their wishes. But then he also, the way he ends up giving up his power is that he hears his son, and his son is being chased or something. It's not.
He's on a freeway off ramp that's all broken down, and
well,
he's in the middle. So he's in the middle of chaos.
He starts in the building first, and people are knocking down the door, and he runs from that. Although it's not entirely clear about
what's happening.
What's happening there, or why he would be in any sort of danger. He's just a kid there. It's not like they're after him. And then he somehow winds up outside, which is, again, looks like a war zone has happened out there. And, like...
He looks like he's on an overpass or something.
Or on a busy road. Yeah. Off-ramp. I like off-ramp. And that so much is that, like, Maxwell Lord is like, no, I have to go save my kid, where it's just like, all contrary to all logic and evidence contrary to that, like, all of a sudden now you're super interested in your kid, where, like, you didn't really seem like that beforehand.
Well, okay, so let's jump forward. He realizes he has to save his kid, so he finally leaves the whatever, what is that thing? He's like in the middle of a centrifuge, sort of.
I don't know what that set dressing was, really. I think that's supposed to be the particle thingy that's shooting up maybe to the satellite. I mean, my best logic at the end of the day,
that makes sense, because I wasn't getting that. So
it was a weird set dressing element.
Yeah, so he realizes that he wants a son. He could hear his son calling for him. He suddenly realizes he needs his son, and he decides to go to him. He's in a bunker in the middle of nowhere. It's dark, it's rocky, it's mountainy, and all of a sudden it's light, and he's on a lawn.
Yeah, and that was the weird thing too.
And he didn't take a helicopter.
No, like he went outside and ran to it, and that was the weird, annoying part to me. Was like, we were just at nighttime, and now we're back at a bunker.
Remote.
It looked remote, and now we're back at the daytime, and not like daytime, kind of like early morning, like. It almost looks kind of like midday, maybe even getting to noonish almost. Like, the sun's been up for a while.
Yeah, it's not dawning.
Yeah, and there's nobody else in the street anywhere, and this kid has just kind of been roaming around.
Well, and when we last left Cheetah...
She's just dead in water, in theory.
Well, Diana brings her up from the water and lays her down, and now Cheetah's awake. But Cheetah's not Cheetah. Cheetah's Kristen Wiig, but you never see her recant her wish.
What would make the most sense to me here at the end of the day, if you played this out properly, would be that, like, when you recant your wish, things go back to the way they were.
But they
originally. So if Lord, so if the notion was that Maxwell Lord gives up his wish, everything that happened beforehand just kind of goes back to normal, and nothing, as if nothing ever changed. You kind of almost wish like you gone back in time. Maybe that's the recanting.
So the Emir recants his wish, and then you see
water. The wall comes down.
The wall comes down, and you see water in the river.
You see the president give up his wish for the nukes, and suddenly all the nukes disappear. And now suddenly
this
Russia.
Is after Russia's launch, but then Russia's thing blows up in mid-sky.
And just kind of dissolves and like breaks up in sky, and nothing bad happens. No nuclear fallout or anything from radioactive stuff. Just dripping over the United States of what
because it's probably over the ocean. Okay.
So and again,
no mushroom cloud.
There is no
suspend reality.
It's as if like the second everyone's immediately starts recanting their wishes, which is not how normal humans would work. Some would, some won't.
Yep. The guy wants his Porsche.
Like
Porsche.
And everything. Everything like overnight kind of goes back to normal.
Yeah.
And then when we next see it again, we see it in
Christmas.
And we kind of see the guy in the one outfit that Diana really liked.
So this is the guy that Steve Trevor's
possessed.
body took over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it isn't Steve Trevor. It doesn't look like Steve Trevor. It's another good-looking guy.
It's the actual original guy that we saw.
But he's wearing the outfit that she put Steve in that she found acceptable.
Yeah. That she liked. And he's even like, all my friends give me shit for it, but like, I kind of like it.
Yeah.
And nothing else happens beyond that.
They kind of
have like a little like, you know, hey, I
have
like
a
you.
moment.
Yeah.
But there isn't. But they don't even get each other's names.
They don't even get anybody's names, and there's not even this notion of like, hey, thanks.
It occurred to me at that point,
you want to go grab like a coffee or something, maybe?
Which is what I expected to have happen. And you know, in that moment, it dawned on me that if she'd wanted to do that, she knew where he lived.
Yeah.
And she didn't ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or even so much as that, like, he doesn't recall her or anything that happened in between then at all.
Yeah.
And again, you could have had it very open-ended where it was like, hey, like, you want to go grab a coffee?
Or you look familiar.
You look very familiar.
If he had said, you look familiar, that would have been cute.
That would have been cute, you know. So, but I think what really would have worked well there, especially, was just leave it open.
Yeah.
You know, hey, like, you want to go grab, like, a coffee, maybe? Like,
yeah.
Because you seem, because I feel like I know you.
Yeah.
And Wonder Woman doesn't say anything. Now, interesting little tidbit there is that both Patty Jenkins' husband and children, and then Gal Gadot's children, are in that Christmas scene. It's actually, I think, one of Gal Gadot's kids that throws the snowball at her.
That's cute.
So it's a cute little moment there.
That's cute. So
yeah, this was a really bizarre movie.
Not a favorite.
No. And I think what this really...
If it had been an hour and 45 minutes...
I think we could have gotten there quicker, but this is, again, it's 151 minutes.
It's 2 hours.
2.5 hours long.
Yeah.
From start to finish.
Yep.
With a really, really banging Easter egg at the very end of the mid-credits. Love
the Easter egg. Totally not going to spoil the Easter egg.
No, not going to spoil the Easter egg. So yeah, this just kind of goes back to the entire DC universe here, where like they're not 100% certain. Are we being campy about it? And I think what part of the problem here is always just that this always goes back to Zack Snyder's intention. I think this realistically goes back to Zack Snyder at the end of the day, where Zack Snyder was when he went to go make the first Superman movie that came out, and I can't even remember its name because they didn't even call it Superman for whatever reason.
Okay.
Man of Steel, they called it Man of Steel. It kind of goes back to there where like they were trying to keep it very hyper realistic.
Yeah. And
I think what they've and again they did that as well with Batman v Superman. They made it very hyper realistic, and what they had to end up doing when they did their course correction for a lot of stuff here, because they realized like this was not a well received movie. It's too realistic. But by that point as well, like you also saw all the Marvel movies that were coming out as well, that were very much of we're having fun comic book movies, and again, like I think there was this big course correction because again, they eventually got it right in the Wonder Woman movie, because there's a lot of humor and a lot of levity.
It's a good balance.
It's good balance between being realistic, especially when you get to the fight and action scenes and elements happening that make sense, but also enough that you have like this levity of like, yeah, we're sidekick characters, but hey, aren't we the most stereotypical cool sidekick characters?
There were opportunities for that as well. So you could have had Kristen Wiig have a lab attendant. I was hoping that maybe it would be the Japanese guy that was helping her,
or maybe so much that they came back, but they were the kids and they were like sprinkled in throughout the movie. Maybe these like grandkids or something that like are just happened to be here again.
Yeah,
you
could have had. So I mean, there were a couple of different places where the movie went in a different direction than I thought it was going to go. Mm-hmm. So one of them really was at the very beginning. I thought, okay, Wonder Woman's getting a sidekick. This is going to be fun to watch.
Yeah.
And I thought that development of the Kristen Wiig Barbara character would have been fun to watch.
And I think they would have
both able to balance their nerdy and suddenly their super strength, I mean, the whole thing that makes Gal Gadot appealing
Mm-hmm.
is that she does seem articulate and smart.
Oh yes,
And sexy and strong, and she embodies all those qualities in equal proportion. And I love that she's shown using them in equal proportion. She is not just about the lasso of truth or any of the or her gadgets.
Gimmicks.
Yeah, her gimmicks. She is about being able to reason this out. She's able to figure things out because she knows these languages. She can read mind glyphs, all these things. I would have rather seen, if you were going to go for this being this long, had the shaman go, I can take you to this ruin. If we can go to this ruin, say you go to Guatemala, or I can take you to this museum that has this stele. And I know from my grandfather that the story of the stone is on this stele. And you could have had this stele be in a museum.
He could have been another archaeologist. He could have been a Mayan expert at like in LA
at the Smithsonian or the LA
at the LA Museum.
The Peabody, which is in I believe Pittsburgh, has a wonderful Mayan collection. So that you could have had her read it off a stele, which to me would have been better than the book.
Yes,
because the book was.
Book is
I have books on Mayan glyphs, and
they're not like that.
They're not like that.
No.
They show the glyphs and then they show English, in regular type explanations.
Yeah.
Whereas this book was entirely glyphs, and it wasn't
very colorful too.
Yeah, yeah, and
it looks like a coloring book at a certain point.
Yeah, and very much pre-printed. It doesn't look like something that was hand drawn.
No.
So you could have taken it there, and she could have read it off a stele, and that to me would have been better. But that's minor, and it doesn't really impact the story. But I like the idea that you get to see a woman be sexy, strong, and intelligent, and that the intelligence is an equal part in her, and her ability to persuade Max at the end, or her figuring out that if she could get people to recant, his health would deteriorate because that's what he took from them, which is what starts to happen.
And see, what I would have liked to have seen is that them going on that adventure, now let's say, or even just as it is now, where they went to go see this Mayan expert guy, that this was the turning point for Kristen Wiig to go from what would have been sidekick, to like, oh, you want, oh, wait a second, I made a wish on that rock too. I'm not giving this up.
Yeah. And be more blatant about it. And be more blatant
about it, and and if you had gotten like a little,
and for her to suddenly have that aha moment when she got, oh, that's where the powers come from. That's why I'm all powerful.
Yeah,
I know who Wonder Woman is. I'm all powerful.
And if you had gotten like little hints of her being more aggressive, like expect, and again, very easy to do here, like not with the drunk guy, but with the homeless guy. Like passing by the homeless guy is like, hey, Barbara, how you doing? I was like, I don't have time for you. Like.
Yeah.
You all right, Barbara? Enough. And like you see her getting more aggressive and
her losing some of
her humanity at that point. You would have gotten that. And again, if that were the changing point there, where like now she's like, okay, no, wait. I now know that from Diana, I now know that Max has the stone, or that Max might be the stone, like.
I thought you could have lost the entire Egypt thing, picked up time, and not lost any storyline.
Oh, I absolutely agree. I think you went there just to be able to say like
action scene,
and oh well, we have to go there. It's like, why do you have to go there?
Because you could have had the flying thing with her needing to get to LA to see the shaman, and could have moved that scene there.
You could have done the entire desert scene in frickin' like in Southern California, in Palm Desert. Could have very easily done it there. Which a lot of, and again, there's a lot of movies.
Did you need it at all?
Did you need it at all? But even so much as that, if you did need it here, like there's plenty of other opportunities instead of going to Spain to go shoot that. There was plenty of other opportunities there. So
yeah,
I recommend the movie just to watch it. It's not like there's a whole lot other stuff out there.
Stories, and I'll recommend the movie because I think it's a lovely slice of 80s having been there.
And I would also just recommend the movie because we don't have, keep in mind, it's still directed by Patty Jenkins, who, there's not a lot of female directors out there, and you want to be able, and at the same time, I still want to be, I don't want a movie like this to say at the end of the day, oh, well, we should never have, female directors ever again. They clearly can't, do a movie like this. They can't clearly do movies like this at all. It's like, I don't want that to become the narrative at any particular point. So, like, I'm of the opinion here that, like, I may not like it, but I still kind of enjoyed watching it when it was happening. Like,
Well,
I do kind. I mean, as much as I like lampoon the idea of Wonder Woman, zipping around in her lasso and like these fights that are just like
And now she can fly.
horribly choreographed here. Like, I do still kind of enjoy the fights for just what they are. Like, if you just turn your brain off, which is what I did the second time watching it, it's fine. It's not going to be great. It's a good C movie at the end of the day.
If it had been shorter.
Oh yeah, if it was a lot shorter, this would have helped out
Because
immensely.
it's a lot of time to dedicate to one movie. It's 2.5 hours, and here's my
the bigger problem as well is it just doesn't do a good job of keeping your attention.
okay. So here's my comment, and this is my hopes for a third Wonder Woman movie, because I actually do hope there's a third Wonder Woman movie, and that's that it didn't move our understanding of her forward, and I would like to see us move, because she's now been in the real world for at this point 60 years, from 1920 to 1984, and I would like her to evolve. To me, she's still the same person she was all those years before, even though she understands modern technology, even though she understands humans. I would like to move her forward, and I don't feel like she moved forward. So I'd like to see her have that opportunity.
Well, I would also like to figure out. I would like the third movie to be, like this element of longing to go back home.
Yeah.
This notion that like,
she sacrificed for this, and the fact that I think she's pretty much decided she's only going to have one love of her life, and is that going to be so?
Yeah.
Is she ever going to open herself up to another?
And then at the same time here, like, there's not a whole lot keeping me here around anymore, and like I'm not really gaining anything. Let me try to go home.
I'm tired.
And the notions that like she can't go home is a character element now that like.
Well, how do you explain that she never ages? I mean, when did she change jobs?
She's
when
a
did
golem,
she become?
or she's a god.
Oh, I understand that, but in human time,
I know.
How do you explain?
How do you explain that she still has a job like this to begin with? For being, a person that looks to be in like her early 30s.
Well, how does she get her passport?
How do you get a passport? How do you keep a job? How do you explain knowing all this knowledge, and yet how do you show credentials for anything? How do you get
where did you go to school?
And especially as we get to more modern times, like I want to see a version here where like it's set in the late 90s. But it's her, but like with the age of this technology and everything, like the ending of 1984 really needed to be Wonder Woman going back to the apartment, after she getting back to the apartment and taking off her armor, like because it was such a big struggle for her in that fight.
Yeah, and
that she has to now deal with the loss of Steve again at this point.
Yeah,
but in so much as that when she gets to the apartment, the picture's missing. The picture that was the entire catalyst of what Wonder Woman was even in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice for.
Yeah.
And so much as that now going into the third movie, she's still trying to find this photo, but she's also now realizing that like a lot of the stuff that she's missing in life, she thinks she can go back home to get it, but she can't get back home.
Yeah.
And I would like to see a version of Wonder Woman where not so much that she's doubting herself, but so much as that she's struggling to be this perfect individual, but yet still doing it, because again, that's always one of the biggest problems that you have with characters like Superman and stuff like that. Like Batman at the end of the day is okay to be vulnerable because he's still just a human, and that what he's doing is not necessarily right, but he deals with it in this way, versus like
he's a vigilante, he knows.
But versus like Superman's kind of like, he's supposed to be the most ideal sort of human at the end of the day, this good person at the end of the day. Like,
but it can't be fun to always be good.
No, it
can't
can't
always
be fun.
Make the right decision.
Well, so much as that you can't always make the right decisions. There is some nuance. So like, what kind of damage does it do to a person? Because you see that in Steve Rogers. You see Steve Rogers, which is meant to be the most idyllic superhero at the end of the day here. Literally his literal name and outfit is based off the American effing flag.
Yeah.
And yet when you get to Civil War here, like, you see that, like, he's still trying to be a good person and the person that lives up to his ideals. It's just that it's complete contrast to what society needs from him right now.
Yeah.
And that's interesting, and I would love to see a Superman that deals with that, or rather, I'd love to see Wonder Woman that deals with that.
Yeah,
because I think that would be a good allegory for women in a lot of cases that are trying to be X, Y, and Z because society needs them to be that versus what they really want to do and be.
Yep.
Because I think that would be a good allegory.
It'd be a better feminist
message.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
So yeah, I think we recommend to watch the movie, if anything else, just because it's out there and it's another cool superhero movie, and we don't know when Black Widow is coming out.
Yeah. Yep.
We also don't know when they have announced more Marvel stuff here. Like, I'm very interested to see Miss Marvel, which will be interesting.
Yep.
And now Miss Marvel is supposed to be a Pakistani girl that has Mr. Fantastic powers that can stretch and everything. So that's supposed to be really cool. And so there's a bunch of cool Marvel stuff that came out, which kind of gives me some ideas of what they might do in the future, maybe. But that's another podcast here.
Yep.
But for this podcast here, we're going to have all the show notes available on our website at thenerdtutorialpodcast.com, all is one word. And then we also continue our conversation as well in our Facebook group at facebook.com/nerdtutorialpodcast. And then, along with what we were following last week, which was Harry Potter, and then Wonder Woman we're following as well. All of our previous topics we follow on our Twitter page, so if you want to see any sort of new news that comes out for any one of our previous topics, or you just want to drop me a line there and let me know, did I get something right? Did I get something wrong? Do you have ideas for future topics here as well? Always looking for new topics here as well. You can let me know on Twitter at nerd_tutorial. But for the time being here, we'll see you guys again next week, where we hope that you guys still stay safe out there in these weird times. And again, we'll see you again next week.
Bye.